Chapter 55, High Priest's Wrath. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. At the junction of the abandoned and western districts of the city, stood a magnificent residence. A rushing carriage arrived from afar and entered the residence, finally stopping in front of the villa. The side door of the carriage opened, and a figure hidden in a cloak stepped out. He declined the service of the servant and strode into the hall. As soon as he entered the hall, he began to roar, his aged voice full of anger. "Jordan, you little rascal, come out here." The angry roar echoed through the hall, frightening the maids inside. Moments later, accompanied by hurried footsteps, a slender and handsome figure descended the stairs. If Charlotte were here, she would have recognized him as none other than Jordan de Gaston, the young nobleman who had embarrassed himself in front of her at the Duke's banquet. Seeing the cloaked figure, Jordan's expression changed slightly, becoming nervous. Waving his hand, he instructed the maids to withdraw, then put on a respectful and pleasing face. "Sir High Priest, why have you come?" The visitor snorted and removed his cloak. He was none other than the High Priest of the Board Duchy, Leonard de Con. The High Priest looked coldly at the young nobleman, his aged voice suppressing his anger. "Why have I come? You should know. Tell me, did you little rascal, disclose the Thorn Rose matter to that fellow?" Upon hearing the High Priest's words, Jordan's eyes evaded, his face filled with fear. Sir High Priest, please let me explain. I had no choice. Nonsense, I have sheltered you so many times, is this how you repay me? Aren't you afraid I'll expose those things you were involved in to your father? The High Priest exclaimed angrily. Jordan turned pale and almost collapsed to the ground. Just then, with a distant sigh, a gentle and calm voice came from the stairs. "Lord Leonard, please calm down. Getting too angry is not good for your health, especially for someone of your age." With steady footsteps, a man dressed in mage robes slowly descended. Seeing the man, the High Priest's gaze narrowed slightly. He squinted his eyes, his expression turning cold. "It's you? You're here too? HMPH, perfect. About yesterday's blood magic incident, don't you owe me an explanation?" The man smiled faintly. He gestured for Jordan to step aside, then said calmly. "Explanation? I wonder what kind of explanation Lord Leonard wanted. Do you want to ask about those missing girls, or about the thorn rose I left at the scene?" The High Priest's expression immediately darkened. "I must remind you, you've crossed the line. Don't forget our agreement." "Agreement? Wasn't it Lord Leonard who broke the agreement first?" The man said indifferently. "What do you mean?" The High Priest's expression turned grim. "What do I mean? It's exactly what I said. Without my consent, you made a deal with the Castell family's young lady behind my back. Where does that leave me?" The man said leisurely, his voice also turned cold. "Don't forget, we agreed from the beginning. The Castell family's young lady can belong to you, but the Castell domain must belong to me." The High Priest narrowed his eyes and said, "That was just a temporary agreement, an empty promise. I didn't sign any contract with her. After I successfully ascend to the position of Archbishop in 6 months, you can do whatever you want with her, and I can even cooperate from the side." "Oh, is that so? I'm afraid that by then, you'll happily take her away from this place of turmoil and forget about me, won't you? Besides, the Holy Court is not solely under your authority." The man chuckled lightly. The High Priest fell silent. He narrowed his eyes slightly. "What exactly do you mean?" "Nothing special. I just wanted to remind you not to forget our agreement. I know you're eager to make achievements and increase your own bargaining chips, which is normal, but please don't interfere with my plans." The man said coldly. Upon hearing the man's words, a flash of anger appeared in the High Priest's eyes, but it quickly turned into fear. He took a deep breath, suppressed his anger, and said, "What do you want?" "I want the church to stop protecting Charlotte de Castell and to stop the theocracy from making demands over the Castell domain." "That's impossible." The High Priest objected decisively. "Then don't blame me for hindering you." The man said leisurely. "You, asking for death." The High Priest immediately became furious. He grabbed the man, and the terrifying pressure of the third-tier blazing sun was unleashed. The man's face turned slightly pale, but he managed to smile albeit with difficulty. "You better calm down. If you kill me, the matter of you hiding the resurrection of the evil god, and those things you did before, will spread throughout the streets of Board tomorrow." The High Priest's expression changed slightly. His hands trembled, his eyes turned red, and his gaze at the man was full of anger, but he eventually relented and let go. "That's better, Lord High Priest." The man said leisurely. The High Priest closed his eyes slowly, grinding his teeth. "I regret it now. I shouldn't have listened to your nonsense. I was deceived by you. Hey, there are always regrets in life, but drowning in regret is not acceptable. We must move forward." The man said with a smile. After speaking, he hinted meaningfully. "Don't be too angry. Perhaps, helping me get hold of the Castell domain as soon as possible would also be beneficial to you." The High Priest's interest was piqued. "We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now." "What do you mean?" The man paused for a moment, then said leisurely. "I heard that the great Duke of Board's old injury has recurred, and he may not have many days left. If you were hoping he could lend you a hand, I'm afraid your hopes will be extinguished. His body has been overtaxed by years of war and can no longer tolerate divine treatment." Upon hearing the man's words, the High Priest's expression changed slightly. "Is that so? Hey, otherwise, why do you think he's so eager to appoint his illegitimate son Leno as his heir?" The man chuckled lightly. The High Priest fell silent. His expression kept changing. Looking at the High Priest lost in thought, the man chuckled. "It seems you thought about it. Board is about to descend into chaos. At this time, whoever can get hold of the Castell domain first might be able to assist you. The Castell family is wealthy enough to support a small country. It's not that we lack means, but we lack enough funds." The man said coldly. The High Priest looked at him coldly. "Your purpose is not just the Castell, is it?" The man chuckled twice but didn't answer. The High Priest looked at him silently for a few seconds, then said coldly. "The church's words that have been spoken will not be retracted. The church will still protect the Castell on the surface. Of course, for your actions, I will turn a blind eye." The High Priest continued. "That's enough. Rest assured, I'm a man of my word. I won't kill her. Instead, I'll train her well and send her to you. Of course, for outsiders, she is already dead." The man said with a smirk. The High Priest snorted coldly, his expression easing slightly. He paused and said, "No need for training. I want her as she is. Besides, don't be overconfident. Even without the church's protection, Castell still has hidden power. Last night, 2 of the church's demon hunter knights sent to protect her were mistaken for stalkers and taken down. Not even a trace of the attackers was found. You don't need to worry about that. I have my own plans." The man said with a smile. "And about the resurrection of the evil god?" "You don't need to worry about that either. As everyone knows, the diligent High Priest has never hidden news of the evil god's resurrection. It's all rumors. HMPH, remember what you said?" The Grand High Priest said fiercely, glaring at him and then leaving without a farewell. "You don't need to remind me." The man called out loudly. Only after the High Priest's carriage left did he laugh lightly and turn back upstairs. Entering the study, he sat down at the desk, and a dark shadow slowly emerged behind him, eventually taking human form, becoming a stooped figure draped in a black hood. Seeing the stooped figure beside him, the man smiled faintly. "You're back? How did your investigation go?" It's the Rose Society. The one secretly protecting her should be the Rose Society. My blood servant died inside Rose Society's territory, and this morning, a suspected Rose Society subhuman maid appeared in the Castell Manor." The stooped figure said hoarsely. "Rose Society? They're a bunch of stubborn ghosts. They've been messing around for so many years, and I never even bother them for once, and yet they come sticking to me like annoying flies." The man frowned. "So, how do you want to deal with these annoying flies?" The stooped figure asked with interest. The man snorted lightly and pulled out a stack of parchment from under the desk. I was planning to deal with them later, but it seems I'll have to do it early. The president of Rose Society is quite a troublemaker. I must eliminate him early. Being able to get support from Rose Society, it seems the Castell's background is quite enormous. The stooped figure said noncommittally, engrossed in reading the parchment. Hey, protecting wanted heretics, smuggling contraband, involvement in bloodborne cases, ties to the Adam cult, and cooperating with the evil god. Tisk tisk, where did you find all these good things? Some of them must be forged, right? You don't need to worry about that. Just give these to the Inquisition, and those guys will be damned. The man said coldly. Rose Society, from top to bottom, I want them, all dead. The man said coldly. Hey, the problem is, who are you going to send? The Inquisition always takes sources of information seriously. Don't tell me you plan to report anonymously, that won't work. The Inquisition is surrounded by watchful gaze. Even birds can trace the source back to you. The stooped figure said. I have my scapegoat candidate. The man said indifferently. After speaking, he lightly pressed the bell on the table. After a moment, the door of the study was gently knocked. Come in. The man said majestically. With a creak, the door was pushed open, and a gentle and beautiful priestess walked in. She bowed respectfully to the man. My lord. Get up, the high priest has left. You don't need to hide anymore. The man nodded slightly. Speaking, he supported his chin with both hands, looked at the beautiful priestess, and smiled faintly. How many years have you been with me? The priestess respectfully replied. It's been 7 years. 7 years. The man sighed lightly. In 7 years, you have become a first-tier priest. The church trusts you, the demon hunter trusts you, and even the usually strict Inquisition has many judgment knights who have received your treatment and owe you favors. He said with a slight smile. Lottie, now I have 2 things for you to do. Chapter 56, Castell Family Old Acquaintances. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Charlotte didn't expect that niece, this handful cat, would actually engage in information sale. If you calculate the time, it should have been when she was still hospitalized at the church hospital half a month ago. This guy is really bold. As a cat of the church, he actually dares to profit from the church, not afraid of provoking the wrath of the high priest. She decided to wait until she returned home to interrogate the other party properly and give it a good beating, so she wouldn't be sold one day. The carriage continued to move and entered the outer city area. This was Charlotte's first time coming to the outer city area during the day, feeling as if she had entered another era. Dirty streets and rows of cheap houses, although better than the dilapidated and desolate old city area, most pedestrians were dressed plainly and looked impoverished, giving the feeling that time had suddenly regressed by 100 or 200 years. Clearly, it was separated by only one wall from the inner city, yet it felt like another world. It felt like riding a bus in previous life through an underpass spanning the city, suddenly moving from a brand new, beautiful, skyscraper-filled new city district to an old city district full of makeshift and rundown buildings. If it weren't for the occasional luxurious carriage passing by on the street, Charlotte would almost believe she had transmigrated again. Master, do you want to visit your store? I heard that the servants would come back happily after hearing the news of you leaning towards the church. They should be working hard now. Sebastian said with a smile. Charlotte. She didn't believe those who ran away would come back on their own, let alone that the news of her leaning towards the church wouldn't spread so quickly in the outer city area. She leaned more towards believing that those servants had been lured back by some influential and favored figure. No need, leave it to Casimodo. Let's go directly to the best servant market. Charlotte glanced at the sky, which seemed to be clearing up, and spoke. All right. Sebastian nodded respectfully. The carriage continued to drive, and after about 20 minutes, it stopped in front of a secluded, old 2-story building. Charlotte glanced at the small building, where she saw a few crooked words nailed to it with wooden boards. Frank Employment Agency. Employment Agency? A strange feeling rose in the girl's heart. Yes, if you want to hire servants, you should come here. Although Frank Employment Agency is not a major agency, it's one of our Rose Society's subordinates. It's very secretive here. Ordinary people can't find it at all. Even your servant Casimodo can't. Here, you can hire any servant you want in board. Even extraordinary ones are not impossible. Sebastian said proudly. After saying that, he paused, smiled, and said, Of course, I think you can directly select servants from Rose Society. They're definitely more professional, more powerful, and more loyal. No need, here is enough. Charlotte shook her head. The servants of Rose Society had been well trained by Sebastian, which was not conducive for her own majesty training. She wanted to personally assemble a team of servants loyal to her alone. It's quite tragic, really. Despite being the head of a prestigious noble family and the heir to the domain, destined to return to the estate and manage the land, Charlotte's options for manpower were remarkably limited. But now, Charlotte had very few people she could use. All in all, there was only Casimodo, plus Sebastian now. Even the scoundrel Nice, who had signed a life and death contract, could only be considered half a subordinate at most. After all, that fellow was too unreliable. As for Sebastian, although he was respectful, he likely had his own purposes and thoughts behind his loyalty to her. While it seemed like they were connected, in reality, they had not yet formed a true bond. As for the members of Rose Society, they were loyal to Sebastian, not to her. For those who had already pledged their loyalty, they were no longer blank slates. The effectiveness of the Majesty magic brainwashing would be limited, especially since Sebastian held such high prestige within Rose Society. Charlotte didn't need people from Rose Society. She needed to find some true blank slates instead. She needed gems that she could freely mold and shape according to her own image. Especially personal maids. She really wanted and needed to cultivate several maids who could serve her closely, those who could be loyal without having to conceal her bloodborne identity in front of the other parties. Ideally, they would not only be young and beautiful, but also professional, reliable, and possessing extraordinary powers. Of course, for now, Charlotte just wanted to recruit moderately. Common or extraordinary were either already recruited by nobles or had grown up and become accustomed to freedom. As for finding some initial embraces, for now, Charlotte wouldn't consider it, as it would increase her chances of getting exposed. Well, everything will be as you need. Sebastian said, seeing the girl's refusal. He didn't continue to insist. He signaled for the carriage to stop, donned his mask, opened the door, instructed the demi-human maid to lay out the carpet, and then gracefully extended his hand towards the carriage. My lady, please be careful. Charlotte glanced at the demi-human maid laying the red carpet at the entrance of the small building and twitched her lips. But before she could descend, a limping middle-aged man hurriedly rushed out of the small building, looking surprisedly at Sebastian, who was disguised with a mask. Lord Sebastian, why are you here? Sebastian. This gentleman, you've mistaken me. I am the steward of this master, Stian. Sebastian said elegantly. Haha, don't joke with me. Even with a mask, I can still recognize your elegant demeanor, not to mention you've laid out the red carpet. The man laughed heartily, pointing at the carpet on the ground. Sebastian. Charlotte glanced oddly at the flame elf, while Sebastian coughed awkwardly and said, It's all right, he's a member of our Rose Society, so it doesn't matter if I'm exposed. With that, he turned to the middle-aged man and said, Frank, this is Miss Charlotte. From now on, I am her steward. Seeing her is like seeing me. No, you should be even more respectful than seeing me. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. You, a steward? The middle-aged man was stunned. But when he saw Charlotte's appearance and then, later, recognized her, he suddenly fell into a trance, freezing in place and murmuring. So similar, incredibly similar. Wait, the Black Eagle family crest? Seeing the emblem on the carriage, the middle-aged man's eyes widened. His body began to tremble, and he suddenly became excited. You're Lady Charlotte of the Castell family? Immediately, the middle-aged man knelt down in front of the girl, choking up with excitement. It's you, it must be you. Lady Charlotte, it's me, do you still recognize me? I'm old Frank. I didn't expect to see you again after 10 years. Charlotte looked at Sebastian with a puzzled expression, and Sebastian looked surprised. It's not my arrangement. I'm not sure what's going on. However, Frank was taken in by me a few years ago. He used to be a wizard, but his magic circuit has been broken. Frank has always been vague about his past experiences. Following the principle of not doubting and questioning people, I have never asked much. After all, Rose Society is not lacking in people with complicated backgrounds. Now it seems, he may be an acquaintance of yours. I was a battle mage. I used to be a battle mage of the Board Mage Corps, always following Lord and Lady Castell. My wife used to be the head maid of the Castell Manor. Frank hastily said. Charlotte's heart stirred. The original owner's parents were the heads of the Board Mage Corps. This middle-aged man claiming to have been a member of the Mage Corps might indeed be an acquaintance of the Castell family. Moreover, his wife had once been the head maid of the manor. Charlotte carefully recalled her inherited memories and found some vague memories of the head maid getting changed, but it wasn't very clear. But, how did they end up in the outer city area and then taken in by Sebastian? Charlotte was curious and puzzled. She glanced at the residents gradually gathering in the distance to watch the excitement, revealing a reassuring smile. Let's go inside first and talk slowly. Seeing the girl's innocent and warm smile, Frank was momentarily stunned. But he quickly reacted, bowed respectfully, and then excitedly said. All right, Mina will be very excited to see you, very excited. Led by the excited and nervous Frank, Charlotte and Sebastian entered the two-story building. In front of them was an old hall, where an old servant was dozing at the door. At the end of the hall was a bar counter, behind which stood a woman in her 40s or 50s, her hair already showing signs of graying, but still exuding the charm of her youth. She was smiling and introducing something to a few guests. Behind her, a huge display board was covered with all kinds of servant information. On the old steps of the stairwell, two pretty little girls in dresses were giggling and playing freely under the guidance of a beautiful young girl in an old maid's uniform. The girl in the maid's uniform looked about 16 or 17, tall and outstanding, with fair skin. She had long black hair and a pair of rare black eyes, which made Charlotte feel familiar. However, although her beautiful face was delicate, it lacked vitality, appearing expressionless like an iceberg. The feeling it gave was like that of an unapproachable cold beauty in animation. Mina, look who's here. As soon as they entered the hall, limping Frank called out excitedly. Hearing his voice, the two girls, the beautiful girl accompanying them, and the woman working all turned their heads. Daddy. The two girls called out sweetly and then pounced into Frank's arms like cheerful pigeons. Dear father. The beautiful girl stood elegantly, bowed to Frank, and made a very standard gesture. Her voice was cold, almost devoid of emotion. After speaking, she obediently stood aside, using her cold, vigilant, and distant gaze to size up Charlotte and Sebastian. The woman who was communicating with the guests was a bit impatient. She put down her work and said coldly, Frank, I've told you many times, don't keep making a fuss, it's disrespectful. However, when she saw Charlotte, her gaze quickly settled. With a thud, the information in her hand fell to the ground, and she also trembled. Madam Catherine? But soon, the woman shook her head. No. But, she really looks like her. Charlotte's heart stirred. Catherine was her aunt. Before marrying into the Duke's mansion, she had always lived in the manor. Lady Charlotte, Mina, she's Lady Charlotte. Don't you remember? She's our little mistress. She's grown up. Frank said excitedly. Lady Charlotte. The woman was stunned. Then, suddenly, she became excited. It's you. You're here. You've come to the outer city. Castell hasn't forgotten us. Castell hasn't forgotten us. Sob. As she spoke, the woman's eyes turned red and she cried out. Chapter 57. The Missing Loyal Servants. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Charlotte didn't expect that she would encounter her former acquaintances just on a whim to select new servants in the outer city area. Seeing the middle-aged couple's excitement upon meeting the girl, amidst their almost incoherent narrative, Charlotte gradually pieced together their identities. Overall, the male and female proprietors of this employment agency were once extraordinary individuals loyal to the Castell family. Old Frank used to serve as a Starry Sky level combat mage in the Board Mage Corps, and he was even bestowed with the title of Baron by Charlotte's father. As for his wife, Lady Mina, she was granted the Awakening Seed and promoted to Starry Sky, becoming a combat maid. Furthermore, Lady Mina was the head maid of the Castell Manor 10 years ago, faithfully serving the Castell family for generations. She was also Charlotte's mother's personal maid and etiquette teacher for the Crescent Kingdom's customs. Yes, Charlotte's mother wasn't from the Crescent Kingdom. She hailed from the Fallen Star Kingdom and apparently had a complicated background. However, due to the Star Moon War, a war originating from the succession of the Crescent Kingdom's throne, which lasted intermittently for nearly 80 years, the two neighboring countries of Crescent and Fallen Star had become sworn enemies. Thus, this secret was deeply buried and rarely mentioned. Even Lady Mina, the maid, only knew that her mistress came from the Fallen Star Kingdom and nothing else. Charlotte was aware of her mother's origins in the Fallen Star Kingdom. Of course, the specifics were unclear. But this matched Lady Mina's identity perfectly. This secret, barely known even within the Castell family, indicated that she had indeed served the Castell family loyally. As the two chatted excitedly, some distant and blurry memories from Charlotte's inherited memories seemed to awaken. When she was very young, there seemed to have been a maid named Mina who served as the head maid. Not only that, but at that time, the Castell Manor was also the temporary headquarters of the Board Mage Corps. In Charlotte's revived memories, she often saw mages in robes coming and going around the estate. Many mages from commoner backgrounds chose to marry maids from the Castell family. However, after the Flame Demon disaster 10 years ago, Charlotte's parents died in battle against the Flame Demon, and the Board Mage Corps disbanded. Many faces disappeared since then. Uncle Frank, Aunt Mina. Charlotte said after a moment of contemplation. I've heard from Quasimodo that after the Flame Demon disaster, many loyal servants of the family were sent back to the family estate. Why are you here? And, you lost your powers? Charlotte carefully chose her words, puzzled. Watching the girl's pure and innocent eyes, Frank and Mina looked at each other with a touch of melancholy. Because, we are the sinners of the Castell family, tainted ones. Losing our powers is our punishment. Old Frank sighed and said. Sinners? Charlotte blinked in confusion. Yes, during the Flame Demon disaster, we failed to fulfill our duty of protecting the Master and were contaminated by the Flame Demon's power. To purify ourselves from the contamination, we lost our powers. Because of our failure to protect, we were driven out of the family by the angry old lady. Mina sighed with a touch of sadness. Was it that old hag who drove them out of the family? Charlotte blinked, then, she felt a slight anger rising. Excuses? It was all that old hag's excuses. What failure to protect? She had asked Quasimodo and nights before. The Flame Demon summoned 10 years ago, Valroca, was legendary. How could there be any protection in that situation? Surviving was already lucky. Many people ended up dying. Moreover, according to Charlotte's inherited memories, it was not a matter of protection failure at all. Her parents voluntarily stepped forward to fight the Flame Demon. Charlotte's parents were both Friar Tyr Blazing Sun. Why would they need protection from Starry Sky servants? It was clearly the crazy old hag seizing the opportunity to purge dissidents and eliminate all those truly loyal to the Castell family. 10 years had passed, and Frank and Mina remained so loyal, which was a testimony. No wonder the Castell family hardly had any loyal servants left, only one marginalized figure like Quasimodo. Charlotte had always wondered why even if the old countess dispatched all the extraordinaries in the family back to the family estate, there should still be some loyal retainers who would stay behind out of concern for the young Charlotte. Now, it turned out to be this reason. Those loyal to the Castell family either died in the Flame Demon disaster or lost their powers, then were driven out of the family by the crazy old hag. Taking a deep breath, Charlotte sighed. No, you did nothing wrong. You never forgot your original intentions. It was the Castell family's fault for letting you down. Lady Charlotte. Upon hearing the girl's words, tears welled up in the couple's eyes. And at this moment, Charlotte realized that her proficiency in Her Majesty magic had subtly increased again. The girl was moved by the loyalty and dedication Frank and Mina showed to the Castell family. Because if it weren't for their strong beliefs, they wouldn't have triggered the Majesty magic's response with just a casual remark from her. In other words, Charlotte's simple apology had completely stirred up a loyalty buried deep in the couple's hearts. They were loyal servants, the lost loyal servants of the Castell family. Charlotte had her answer. Uncle Frank, Aunt Mina, how many people are there in the outer city area like you who were forced to leave the family? After a moment of contemplation, she asked softly. Old Frank sighed. There are many. Then, he looked gratefully at Sebastian. We must thank Lord Sebastian. People like us who lost our powers and almost became disabled, Lord Sebastian took us in. Now, under the protection of Rose Society, we have managed to find some work in the outer city area, barely able to survive. Sebastian? Charlotte subconsciously turned to look at the quasi-steward standing behind her. Sebastian coughed and hurriedly explained. It's just a coincidence, my lady. As you know, people like Mr. Frank and Mrs. Mina, even if they have lost their powers, their experience and knowledge are still quite valuable. Gold shines everywhere. For Rose Society, they are precious talents. Charlotte looked deeply at Sebastian, neither affirming nor denying. Then, she looked at the couple's aged faces, the two pretty little girls peeking from behind the stairs, and the expressionless beautiful girl standing behind the couple. After a moment of thought, Charlotte said, Uncle Frank, Aunt Mina, have you ever thought about returning to the family? Grandmother has long since fallen. She even wanted to kill me. Her expulsion of you was illegitimate from the beginning. If you're willing, the gates of Castell Manor are open to you at any time. Upon hearing the girl's words, Uncle Frank was slightly stunned, then almost instantly became excited. We are willing, We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. Before he could finish his sentence, he was interrupted by Mrs. Mina. The former housekeeper remained silent for a few seconds, then squeezed out a smile with apology. Sorry, Lady Charlotte. Although we would love to return to the family, we are quite content with our current life. These many years, we have also grown tired, so. Sorry. She lowered her head with guilt. Lady Mina's words surprised Charlotte a bit. Although somewhat regretful, since the other party declined gracefully, she no longer insisted. All right, I apologize for my impetuosity. Charlotte sighed. The couple isn't young anymore. They wish to avoid trouble and live peacefully in their old age. Charlotte understands this. However, being politely rejected is so damn awkward. Charlotte felt like the atmosphere in the entire room was getting stiff. Frank, we've caught up enough. Let's get back to the main topic. We came here today to hire some new servants for the master. Sebastian chuckled, breaking the awkward atmosphere. Upon hearing his words, Uncle Frank's spirits lifted. He was about to say something but was pulled back by Mrs. Mina. Lady Charlotte, may I ask what kind of servants you would like to hire? She asked respectfully, her demeanor completely different from her earlier excitement. New people. I want some new people, with clean backgrounds who have never served other nobles. Charlotte said after thinking for a moment, exhaling in relief. Uncle Frank's eyes almost instantly lit up again, but he was quickly pulled back by his wife. Your request is not unreasonable. I believe we should be able to find the candidates you need. How many people do you need? Lady Mina asked respectfully. About 50 people. Charlotte replied. 50 people. Lady Mina pondered for a moment, seemingly calculating something. After a moment, she stood up with Uncle Frank. I understand. Please wait here for a moment, and Frank and I will go upstairs to look for relevant information. Saying that, she turned to the beautiful girl standing aside. Sherry, please prepare a cup of milk for Lady Charlotte. With that said, Mina forcibly dragged Uncle Frank upstairs. Why does everyone in the world know I like to drink milk? Watching the beautiful girl silently preparing the warm milk, Charlotte couldn't help but mutter in her heart. Lady Mina dragged Uncle Frank upstairs. As soon as they reached the second floor, Uncle Frank angrily broke free from his wife's hand. Mina, what were you doing just now? Why did you reject Lady Charlotte? Aren't you the one who has been yearning to return to the manor day and night? Aren't you the one who talks about returning to serve Castell again every day? Didn't we agree that we would one day return to serve Castell with loyalty? Why did you refuse Lady Charlotte now? Don't you see how upset she was just now? She's our little mistress. Uncle Frank said angrily, but as soon as he finished speaking, he was slightly stunned because he saw his wife already in tears, completely different from her calm demeanor downstairs. Lady Mina wiped her reddened eyes and whispered, Frank, do you think I don't want to? I also want to return to Castell Manor. I also want to be by Lady Charlotte's side. She's our little mistress. When she was very young, I was the one who helped her learn to walk. But we are not who we used to be. We're old now. We've lost our strength. We've been labeled as tainted due to flame demon disaster. These years, to survive, we've done a lot of dirty work for Rose Society. These things are not secrets. They could become ammunition for other nobles or even the church to attack our little mistress. We are no longer qualified to return to the manor. We would only be burdens to Castell, stains on the family, and dim the glory of the great black eagle. We can't go back to the past. Uncle Frank stared blankly at his wife, who was unable to speak through her tears, feeling somewhat dejected for a moment. Does that mean we can never stand under the soaring banner of the eagle again? Suddenly, Lady Mina raised her head, her gaze unprecedentedly firm, her expression unprecedentedly sincere. No, of course, we can. Perhaps we ourselves can't stand proudly behind the master again, but our will can, our legacy can. For so many years, we have been passing on what we have learned in our lifetime to Sherry. Isn't that for this day? Leaves eventually return to the soil, but new buds will bloom on the branches. The firewood will eventually burn out, but the spark can be passed down from generation to generation. We are like this, and so are others. We, the generations of servants who have followed and served the Castell family for generations, have never chosen to leave the city of Board. Instead, we have settled down, quietly educating the next generation. Isn't it for this day? For so many days, you and I have been paying attention to the movements of Castell Manor, and I'm sure we are well aware of the hardships our little mistress is facing. The fact that the little mistress has come to the outer city area must mean that she has reached a point where no one else is available. She needs our strength now, and it's time for us to offer her our strength. Frank, go tell everyone about Lady Charlotte's arrival in the outer city area. Tell everyone that Castell has come, that Castell hasn't forgotten us. Tell everyone that it's time for our legacy to shine under the great black eagle again. Our descendants will follow Castell again in our place, follow our master, and let the glorious black eagle banner fly over the sky of Board. Lady Mina's expression was excited. Downstairs, Charlotte, with keen senses, let out a long sigh and slowly withdrew her gaze from the second floor. Her eyes were filled with complexity. Chapter 58, The Little Match Girl. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Sebastian, you've known the origins of Mr. Frank and Mrs. Mina for a long time, haven't you? Taking her gaze away from the beautiful girl busy squatting in front of the cabinet, Charlotte looked at the respectfully standing Sebastian. Sebastian smiled faintly. Master, what are you talking about? Charlotte quietly looked at him, her deep blue eyes carrying a strong sense of oppression that didn't match her youthful appearance. After a moment, Sebastian uncomfortably averted his gaze and sighed, respectfully saying, Indeed, you are, truly great master. Nothing can escape your eyes. Why beat around the bush instead of just telling me directly? Charlotte frowned. Sebastian smiled bitterly. They've been working for Rose Society for many years. Although most people like Mr. Frank are loyal, there is a small minority who hold grudges against Castell. I was afraid they might bear a grudge. Rather than me telling you about their past, it's better to let them recognize your identity in person. The effect would be better. Charlotte fell silent. After a moment, she shook her head. If they really held grudges, how could these followers of the Castell family still stay in Board City? Miss Charlotte, please have some milk. Just as the two were chatting, the beautiful girl in a maid uniform approached with a steaming cup of milk. Her voice was clear, her posture elegant and standard. Is this Sherry, whom Mr. Frank and Mrs. Mina have taught everything? Charlotte couldn't help but look at the girl a few more times, subconsciously comparing her to the maids trained at her estate. Standing like a peony, sitting like a rose, walking like a lily. Watching the girl's movements, Charlotte naturally associated them with a phrase from her past life. Although Sherry's clothes were worn out, every move she made exuded the elegant demeanor of a noble servant. Even the gesture of handing over the milk was obviously trained, respectful yet graceful, elegant yet restrained. Charlotte took the milk, which was just the right temperature, not too hot to scald, but not cold either. She took a few sips. Although the taste was far from the rich milk at home, it was warm and comforting with just the right amount of sweetness. Soon, Charlotte came to a conclusion. The girl's demeanor surpassed that of her own maids by several levels. Even the maids she had in her estate right after transmigrated couldn't compare to her professionalism. Charlotte was more and more satisfied as she looked at Sherry. With a clean background, like a blank sheet of paper, and extremely high professionalism. Isn't this the kind of person she was looking for on this trip? Of course, unlike the excited Mr. Frank and Mrs. Mina, Sherry was obviously much more distant from Charlotte, even cold towards her. But Charlotte could understand. Unlike Mr. Frank and Mrs. Mina, who had their hearts in Castell, Sherry had grown up almost entirely in the outer city and had no feelings for Castell. But that's even better. Turning this blank sheet into her own color, wasn't this the best opportunity to enhance her majesty? Conquering the indifferent and prideful girl, wasn't that a more fulfilling challenge? The more Charlotte looked at Sherry, the more satisfied and expectant she felt. Meanwhile, Mr. Frank and Mrs. Mina, who had finished their discussion, went into action separately. Mr. Frank, with his lame leg, went to the backyard, mounted a pack horse, and hurried away, while Mrs. Mina wiped her red eyes, put on a respectful yet distant smile again, and returned to Charlotte's side. Miss Charlotte, we can find the people you need. Mr. Frank is already preparing, but it may take some time. It's all right, we can wait. Charlotte smiled. Descendants of loyal servants who haven't forgotten their original intentions for 10 years are worth her weight. This is a dilapidated alchemy shop. A dirty old man is dozing off in front of the shop. Suddenly, urgent hoofbeats are heard, accompanied by an excited and joyful voice. Carl, are you still alive, old man? The old man looked up, frowned, and said, Frank, what are you doing in broad daylight? Can't you see I'm resting? Ha ha ha, don't sleep. Miss Charlotte is here. Miss Charlotte is here. Castell hasn't forgotten us. Castell wants to call back its loyal servants. Why are you still standing there? Hurry up and take Landon with you to meet her. Without waiting for the old man to come to his senses, Frank shouted again and rushed off in another direction. The old man was slightly stunned, then gradually came to his senses. Miss Charlotte, Charlotte. She's our little miss. His old, cloudy eyes suddenly lit up. He suddenly stood up, limped into the shop, and rushed inside, shouting excitedly. Lisa, good news, good news. In a small tavern in the outer city slums. A woman with half of her face scarred stood behind the bar, pouring drinks for the drunken patrons. Suddenly, the tavern door was pushed open, and Frank, out of breath, appeared in front of everyone. His gaze quickly fell on the woman, and he said excitedly. Epinephrine, Miss Charlotte is here. Miss Charlotte is here in the outer city. She's at our house now. She wants to call back the loyal servants of Castell. Why are you still sighing over the uniforms on the wall? Hurry up and take Jennifer to meet her. Without waiting for the woman to come to her senses, Frank turned around again and hurriedly left the tavern. Leaving the woman standing there, her gaze vacant, not even noticing that the ale in her hand had spilled all over the table. Charlotte, she's our little miss. Her eyes suddenly brightened. Hey, epinephrine, the ale spilled, the ale spilled. Seeing the spilled ale all over the table, the drinkers quickly shouted. The woman was stunned for a moment, then immediately got up. Sorry, everyone, I have something to do suddenly. Today's tavern will be closed temporarily. A bustling clothing shop on the outer city commercial street. An elderly couple of tailors were busy making clothes for their customers. Suddenly, with the sound of hooves and the astonished exclamations of passers-by, a stumbling figure quickly rushed in. Maddock, Diva. Miss Charlotte is here. Miss Charlotte is here in the outer city. She's at our house now. She wants to call back the loyal servants of Castell. Oh, stop sighing over the uniforms on the wall. Quickly take the children to meet her. After saying this, Frank, out of breath, left the shop again. The elderly couple were stunned. The woman soon became excited. Little miss, it's the little miss. My dear, I knew it. Castell hasn't forgotten us. However, the old tailor had an angry expression on his face. HMPH, what's there to be happy about? You abandoned us in the first place, and now you want to call us back? Dream on. Nobles, not a single good one among them. With that said, he stormed to the wall and tore down the framed Castell family uniforms. His eyes were red with anger. He was about to smash them to the ground, but when his hands touched them, he found it hard to follow through. Trembling as he looked at the faded uniforms, the old tailor let out a faint sigh, and gently closed his eyes, tears glistening at the corners. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. After a moment, he opened his eyes, the anger long gone, replaced by loneliness and sadness. The Castells have come, but it's already too late. We don't have the right to wear them anymore. Go call Laura and Silvano. Today, the shop will be closed. Today was destined to be a busy day in the outer city. Horses galloped through the streets, and wherever they passed, shops closed or households boiled over. Even old servants, serving their masters, suddenly dropped their work, turned around without a word, and left excitedly, leaving their bewildered masters behind. On the streets, carriages of all sizes drove out of alleys, carrying old men and their children towards the same destination. They were like droplets of rain, soon turning into streams, and with time, those streams gradually converged into a rushing river. Frank's employment agency. Charlotte, waiting for Frank to return, sat at the table, one hand holding a doll, the other a wolf plush, earnestly narrating Earth's healing fairy tale. So, the little match girl who was kicked out of her home and the wolf who escaped from the circus after being abused, lived in the forest. Sharing the same fate, they became good friends who shared everything. The girl would secretly give food to the wolf, and the wolf would let the girl sleep in its warm embrace on cold nights. A week passed, and it was finally time for the banquet. Encouraged by the wolf, the little match girl finally mustered the courage to attend. However, no matter how much the girl begged, her wicked stepmother and stepsisters refused to let her attend the prince's ball, so the little girl could only cry and run away. Charlotte's voice, soothing and melodious, carried a faint sorrow. Frank's two beautiful daughters sat beside her, obediently propping their chins, their big eyes focused on the girl telling the story, their pretty faces filled with concern. Even the indifferent elder daughter Sherry stood aside, quietly listening, her hands tightly gripping the tray, her fingertips slightly pale, seemingly worried about the little match girl's fate. That wicked stepmother, the little match girl is so pitiful, the wolf is really gentle. What happened next, Charlotte? What happened next? The two chattering pretty girls eagerly asked. Charlotte paused, took a sip of milk, and continued to wave the dolls, emotionally recounting. On a snowy night, the girl cried holding matches in the deserted street. At this moment, the wolf appeared again. Dressed in circus prince attire, the wolf came to the girl and gently said, Beautiful miss, may I have this dance with you? Seeing the wolf in the circus outfit, which looked somewhat ridiculous, the girl was a bit puzzled. Mr. Wolf, don't you hate circus costumes the most? The wolf said. If others can't be your prince, let me be your prince. Frank's younger daughters were completely fascinated, eagerly asking. What happened next, Charlotte? What happened next? Sherry, too, unconsciously sat down at the table, her face tense, her expression focused. Charlotte glanced at them, revealing a pure and warm smile, continuing her narration. The girl laughed through her tears. She took the wolf's outstretched hand and danced gracefully in the snow, like a beautiful princess at a ball. After a while, the girl grew tired. She looked at the wolf's ugly and terrifying face, and happily and innocently asked, Mr. Wolf, why do you have such big eyes? The wolf said, so I can see you clearly. Then why do you have such a big nose? The wolf said, so I can remember your scent. Then why do you have such a big mouth? Charlotte suddenly paused. Looking at the 3 pairs of eyes staring straight at her, she continued. The wolf bent down, leaving a kiss on the girl's forehead. So I can deeply kiss you. The girl cried. She hugged the wolf. Mr. Wolf, take me away. Let's leave this sad place together. Let's start our own new life. The wolf also hugged her, gently saying, let's travel together. Let's pursue our happiness together. From now on, there will be no more sadness or tears. Finishing the story, Charlotte gently placed the 2 dolls together, letting out a distant sigh. The 2 little girls listening to the story were completely enthralled. Mr. Wolf is so kind. I also want such a gentle Mr. Wolf. That's great. They can finally live happily together. The girls expressed their longing and excitement. The beautiful maid Sherry, who had been eavesdropping on the story from the side, quietly breathed a sigh of relief. Her previously indifferent eyes now showed a hint of vitality. Even Sebastian, standing behind Charlotte, had his scarlet eyes soften warmly. Seeing the group in such a state of healing happiness, Charlotte's lips curved into a subtle, devilish smile. She suddenly sighed, gently picked up the wolf doll, and spoke in a tender, melodic voice tinged with sorrow. The next morning, people found the little girl frozen to death on the street. She had a blissful smile on her face, holding the worn-out wolf doll her deceased mother had given her, surrounded by spent matchsticks. The girls. Sherry. Sebastian. Wah. The 2 beautiful little girls immediately burst into tears. Crack. Sherry crushed the tray in her hands. Even Sebastian, who had been smiling, had his expression freeze instantly. At this moment, the door of the small building was pushed open, and Mrs. Mina reappeared. Wah, boo-hoo, mommy, the little girl died, wah. In her bewildered gaze, her 2 daughters ran over and cried loudly. Maid Sherry sprang up, hitting her knee on the table corner. She staggered, wobbled a bit, but still stood up, hobbling and storming upstairs without looking back, as if holding her anger. Seeing her charming smile, Sebastian couldn't help but twitch the corners of his mouth. Master, you really know how to tell a story. I'm teaching them the cruel reality. Charlotte said leisurely. Sebastian. Well done. He had nothing else to say but this. On the other side, Mrs. Mina comforted her daughters who were crying uncontrollably, then came to Charlotte's side respectfully, saying, Charlotte, my lady. They're here. Chapter 59, True Effectiveness of Majesty. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Have they arrived? Charlotte's heart stirred slightly. Where? She suppressed her anticipation and asked. In the backyard, everyone is waiting for you. Mrs. Mina said respectfully. Charlotte immediately stood up. Take me there. Guided by Mrs. Mina, Charlotte arrived at the backyard of the 2-story building. When she walked out, she was slightly stunned. The backyard of the small building was very large, more like a square that could accommodate 200 or 300 people. It should have been specially used for live-in servant transactions between masters and servants. But at this moment, the yard was already full of people. Elderly people supported each other quietly standing. Some had lost a leg, some had lost an arm, some were using crutches, some had disfigured faces. Their clothes were all different, but they were all washed clean, mostly patched, but some had a sickly complexion and ragged clothes, indicating that they were not living well. Behind them, there were also young men and women, the youngest possibly only 12 or 13 years old, the oldest not exceeding 16, totaling about 50 people. Seeing Charlotte coming to the yard with Mrs. Mina, everyone's eyes focused on her. The elderly people's expressions quickly became excited, while the young men and women were mostly curious. Old Frank stood at the forefront of the crowd. He also leaned on a crutch, his face solemn. Seeing Charlotte, he took a step forward, placed his right hand over his chest, straightened his back, and with an old and trembling voice filled with strong pride. Lady Charlotte, Castel Battle Mage Corps, Castel Maid Corps, reporting to you. Castel Battle Mage Corps, Castel Maid Corps, reporting to you. The other elderly people standing proud echoed in unison. They placed their right hands over their chests, performing the most ancient and sacred allegiance ceremony of the Crescent Kingdom. Then, they all stepped back together, pushing the young people behind them to the forefront. Unlike the elderly, they were not wearing well-fitted Castel uniforms, and most of the colors were faded with many patches. However, despite the old uniforms, they were neatly cleaned, without a single stain, showing the owner's care. The young men and women were a little uneasy, many clearly unprepared. Encouraged by their parents, they began to nervously report. Number 1, Apprentice Knight, Rand reporting. Number 2, Apprentice Maid, Jennifer reporting. Number 3, Apprentice Tailor, Laura reporting. Number 4, Apprentice Knight, Silvano reporting. Number 5. The young men and women reported one by one. Their professions were different, but all revolved around the heritage of noble servants, and the vast majority were unranked extraordinary. Every one of them, even if they did not become followers of nobles, could live better lives than commoners in the future. But now, they were all standing here. After the last young man reported, Mrs. Mina forcibly brought over her daughter, Sherry. Although seemingly reluctant, the beautiful maid still stood at the end of the line. Her cold voice showed no emotion. Number 55, Apprentice Mage and Apprentice Knight, Sherry, reporting. With that, everyone finished reporting. Lady Charlotte. They are the best newcomers I have found for you. They are our descendants and our hope. Although we can no longer follow you, they can. To offer loyalty to the great Castel is their glory. I hope you can treat them kindly, teach them, and let them follow you further on the path towards the future. Mrs. Mina sincerely and hopefully said. Seeing over 100 excited elderly people and more than 50 young men and women in front of her, Charlotte felt an indescribable emotion spreading in her chest. Although she knew that bringing these servants' descendants was not only about loyalty to Castel but also for the future of the next generation, she was still deeply moved. A great family that had been passed down for hundreds of years could not lack heritage. They were the lost heritage of Castel. At this moment, Charlotte suddenly felt a little envious of her deceased parents, who could have such loyal and lovely followers' loyalty. She knew that she had found the one she was looking for. The girl came to the front of the crowd, took a deep breath, and in the dim and bright, old and young eyes, she spoke. Everyone. I am Charlotte de Castel. The Lord of Castel, the inheritor count of Board. I deeply apologize for the unfair expulsion that Castel made to you 10 years ago. Castel was wrong. Castel committed unforgivable sins. You are the loyal guardians of the family. You should not be branded with stigma. Please allow me to apologize on behalf of Castel. After saying that, under the somewhat confused gaze of the crowd, Charlotte pinched her skirt and bowed. Lady Charlotte, you, what are you? Seeing the girl bowing to herself, old Frank was startled and quickly approached her. Many elderly people also wanted to reach out to stop her, but seeing their dirty and calloused hands, they all trembled and withdrew, only able to move to the sides to avoid the girl's bow. After Charlotte bowed, she wanted to continue speaking, but seeing the pure, expectant, uneasy, excited, and joyful gazes of the elderly, 1,000 words finally turned into a sigh. Everyone. Let's go home. Hearing the girl's words, the elderly people were stunned, and then their vision blurred. Low sobs rang out in the crowd, quickly turning into sobbing cries. At the same time, Charlotte's mastery of majesty magic also soared in an instant, finally entering the advanced realm, only one step away from the perfect realm. At this moment, Charlotte understood somewhat. The truly effective majesty comes from sincerity. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. The elderly accepted Castell's apology. However, they ultimately declined Charlotte's invitation, and no one chose to return to the manor. They had lost their strength, they were extremely inferior, and they did not want to become the filth on the brightest star in their hearts, nor did they want to become a burden to their descendants. Even though in Charlotte's eyes, they were clearly the most adorable people. Although regretful and helpless, seeing the elderly people so persistent, Charlotte did not force them anymore. However, when the girl left, the carriages accompanying her were filled with young men and women. They were the descendants of the elderly people, and they would take over the relay baton from their parents, inheriting their legacy. They would be the beginning of Castell's future. A great family had never been alone. Loyal subjects, fervent followers, faithful servants. They were all part of the family. None of them could be missing. Of course, many of them might also become nobles in the future, become lords, and become the ancestors of another noble family loyal to Castell. However, looking at the spacious carriage, Maid Sherry was reluctant to get on. Under the repeated urging of the frank couple, she reluctantly boarded the carriage, but it was obvious that she was not very willing. Hee, my lady, it seems that you still have a long way to go to completely win their hearts. Do you need my help to teach them well? Beside Charlotte, Sebastian smiled slightly. Charlotte glanced at him and shook her head gently. No need, I'll handle it myself. I will let them know that I am a lord worthy of loyalty. Of course, you are, and Sebastian has never doubted it. Sebastian elegantly bowed, not missing the opportunity to flatter. With the young men and women on board, the carriage slowly drove away from Frank's employment agency under the gaze of the elderly. As the carriage left the block, the Castell family's carriage also arrived. From afar, Charlotte heard Quasimodo's excited voice. My lady, phew, finally found you, finally found you. The carriage stopped, and the relieved old servant also came to the side of the carriage, but he soon discovered the young people on the carriages behind. They are my new servants. Through the carriage window, Charlotte said. Glancing at the ill-fitting clothes on the young men and women, Quasimodo suddenly realized, then showed relief. So, it's them. Do you know them? Charlotte's heart moved. Quasimodo respectfully replied. Yes, my lady, the old servant has always known. It's just that their parents' identities are special, and every time the old servant visits, they shut the old servant out, and the old servant doesn't know how to welcome them back. After speaking, Quasimodo looked at the girl, showing excitement and relief. But now, it seems unnecessary. Charlotte fell silent, but in her heart, there was a light sigh. How could 10 years of being ignored and expelled not leave a trace of resentment? However, that trace of resentment had dissipated when she personally came to the outer city. However, regarding Quasimodo's words, Charlotte still had some doubts. Parents? I see many people are already very old, but their children are very young. Regarding this question, Quasimodo didn't know how to answer. But Sebastian beside him sighed lightly. Below legendary, the lifespan of extraordinary humans is not much longer than that of ordinary people. Whether it's pollution purification or loss of power, it will greatly reduce the lifespan of former extraordinary. They declined your offer, not just because of unwillingness, but also because they don't have many years left to live. Charlotte fell silent. After a long time, she sighed softly. Let's go home, and then, find out their current whereabouts. Send a sum of gold tanna to them every month in the future to help them improve their lives. Those who don't have a job, let them have some easy work in the family shop. Kind master, I will obey your orders. Quasimodo bowed. Let's go home. Charlotte said. With that, the girl lowered the carriage curtain. However, as soon as she turned her head, she saw the black cat Nice trying to sneak onto the carriage. The two looked at each other. Charlotte. Nice. Ah hee hee, great Miss Charlotte, good morning. Meow meow meow, why didn't you tell Nice when you went out? Nice was left behind and really sad. The black cat widened its amber eyes and started to act cute. Then, it saw Charlotte's expression gradually turning cold. Who let you on the carriage? Suddenly, the girl smiled. Get off and run after the carriage. Nice. Chapter 60. The years are peaceful, but storms are brewing. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Wow, is this Castell Manor? Is this where we'll be working in the future? So, huge, so beautiful. It's not as terrifying as the rumors say. Trees, so many trees, and flowers, wow, and there's even a fountain. Such a big house. Is this a palace? It feels like a dream. In Castell Manor, the young boys and girls who got off the carriage looked around curiously, their expressions filled with excitement. Even the most nervous child at this moment had sparkling eyes. Having grown up in the outer districts, they had never seen such a sight. Even Sherry, looking at the colorful flowers and butterflies dancing in the garden, had a slight sparkle in her cold eyes. Of course, this will be where everyone works from now on. Not only that, everyone's monthly allowance will be calculated similarly to apprentice priests in the church, 20 gold tanna per month. And if everyone performs well in the future, or ascends in rank, the treatment will be further improved. Looking at the excited young boys and girls, Charlotte smiled. Upon hearing her words, everyone became even more excited. 20 gold tanna? Oh my god, more than my father's annual income. Castell Manor is amazing. Hail Lady Charlotte, hail the Castell family. The young boys and girls cheered. Watching their excitement, Charlotte's lips curled up slightly. Unlike the older servants who had been hired before, these young boys and girls were like blank slates, the easiest to shape and satisfy. Facing them, Charlotte didn't need to put in as much effort training them as she did with the previous servants. Back then, just getting the servants not to see her as a little girl took a lot of effort. Teenagers are more susceptible to kindness than coercion. Facing these newcomers, as long as you treat them well, and let them feel that you are one of them, combined with the natural noble and master identity, you can completely gain the recognition and loyalty of the vast majority of people. In other words, the charm effect in majesty magic might be much better than the intimidation effect when facing these newcomers. The most obvious evidence was that from the moment they first saw her, the young apprentice knights and mage apprentices in the group blushed, their eyes avoiding hers, but each of them seemed eager to become faithful followers of the girl. Especially when Charlotte glanced at them inadvertently. She smiled slightly, her golden hair shining in the sunlight, her azure, pure eyes seeming to carry a profound magic, almost drawing the souls of the young men away. The pure and goddess-like feeling, reminiscent of first love in the schoolyard, Charlotte perfectly replicates it. The knightly spirit and protective desire buried in the hearts of the teenagers were almost instantly aroused. They wished to kneel down before the girl and offer their loyalty. Although, in reality, they probably couldn't beat Charlotte alone. There are differences among extraordinary individuals who have not ascended in rank. Although most of these children of extraordinary individuals have awakened extraordinary powers, they are not as powerful as Charlotte, who is bloodborn. But they are the hope of the Castell family's future. With a little training and the resources of the wealthy Castell family, Charlotte could make them stand out in a few years. They are the future personal guard knights and court mages of Charlotte. Apart from them, there are maids, including Sherry, who calls herself an apprentice mage and apprentice knight, totaling 23 people. They have all received professional training, suitable for the etiquette training of the Castell family. Although the charm effect is slightly weaker on them, whenever the girl smiles at the girls, they blush and lower their heads. Except for Sherry. She is the most versatile, able to attend banquets and work in the kitchen, with cooking skills even better than those of the manor chef, and her awakened extraordinary power is also the strongest among the maids. However, she has always been cold to Charlotte. The mask you wear really is deceptive, she said coldly. Charlotte smiled faintly, ignoring the girl's sarcastic provocation. She knew the girl was very wary of her, and she didn't want to stay here, wishing Charlotte would return her immediately. She also knew why. After communicating with Kasumoto, Charlotte learned that Sherry had witnessed her parents being driven out of the manor when she was young and had experienced a quite difficult period. In this situation, it's normal for her not to trust the Castell family, even loathe them. But even so, she still listened to her parents and came to the manor silently, which indirectly showed that she was a good and obedient child. Charlotte looked forward to the day when she could open the girl's heart and gain her loyalty. This gave her an impulse and challenging feeling like playing a game. After all, the more thorny the rose, the more fragrant it blooms. The addition of more than 50 young boys and girls made the previously somewhat deserted Castell manor lively. However, Charlotte didn't stay outside for too long. The longer the sun was out, the more uncomfortable she felt. Returning to the study, Niece, who was panting, finally rushed back. It collapsed on the ground like a dead cat, its eyes full of resentment as it looked at the girl. Miss Charlotte, my lord, what did I offend you again? Charlotte glanced at it lightly, not answering directly, but instead asked. How many people know about the thorn rose? Nice's eyes widened suddenly. It instantly understood why it was being punished, and for a moment, it felt guilty. Well, Miss Charlotte, it's a misunderstanding. I wasn't your servant back then. Meow, you know, even a cat has to buy fish with money. The church doesn't give me allowances, so I have to figure it out myself. Charlotte gave it a cold glance and repeated. How many people know about the thorn rose? Nice shrank its neck. It thought for a moment and said. Not many. I didn't need sell information, but only to Rose Society. Wait, was it that guy Sebastian who told you? That guy without any sense of contract. Realizing something, Nice was suddenly furious. But seeing Charlotte's icy gaze, it shivered and withdrew its gaze, tucking its tail and continuing. Besides Rose Society, there's Raoul, Kara, the Duke, and the High Priest. No, wait, there should be one more person who knows. The second son of the Gaston family seems to be called Jordan? As the children of vassals, they must serve in the Lord's house for a period of time, and he is the personal guard knight of the Duke's mansion. Kara mentioned it to the Duke, and when she went out, she happened to meet him. He had a dodgy look in his eyes at the time, probably heard it outside the door. Jordan, the scaredy cat peacock? Charlotte's heart moved slightly as she looked at Sebastian beside her. A cowardly waste, but he has made a group of friends. Maybe we can investigate him thoroughly. The secrets of your holy symbol are likely to have leaked from him. Sebastian said. Charlotte nodded slightly. You go and investigate this, and also, prepare some extraordinary blood for me, like last time. As you command. Sebastian bowed respectfully, eager to perform. After giving the orders, Charlotte looked at the nervous black cat Nice and said coldly. What you did in the church before, I can overlook it. But now that you've become my servant, you need to know what to do and what not to do. If I find out that you've done something against me, would you like to lose your life, or would you like to lose the two little things below the cat's butt? It's your choice. Hearing the girl's threatening words full of killing intent, Nice felt a chill under its belly and couldn't help but shiver. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. All right, now get lost. Charlotte gave the order to leave. Nice felt as if it had been granted a reprieve and quickly slipped away with its tail between its legs. Sebastian also smiled slightly, gracefully bowed, and took his leave. But as he walked out of the study, he couldn't help but smile at the nervous black cat. Haha, Lord Nice. You should be careful. Don't end up like the prisoners of the Eastern Unit Empire that got turned into a cat. With that, he laughed heartily and left. Watching the departing figure of the fire elf, Nice was both angry and frustrated. That shameless lackey, taking advantage of this cat's predicament. But after cursing, a sense of urgency rose in its heart. No, I must redeem my image in front of the evil lord. I can't let that scheming elf ride on this cat's head. Speaking to itself, Nice hurriedly left. In the next few days, Charlotte's life became much calmer. As her speech of faith in the church continued to spread, rumors about the Castell family in Board City also dissipated. No nobles continued to cause trouble for the girl, and it seemed that even the Blood Demon cult had given up on their assassination plan after their failure, and everything seemed to return to normal. After a bit of pressure, the black cat Nice delivered a big gift the next day, a thick, well-organized spellbook containing various spells it had learned. Charlotte flipped through it briefly and couldn't help but feel excited. Wow, from the easiest apprentice spells to higher-level spells that only third-tier mages could learn, there were hundreds of them, covering a wide range of types, including legendary and taboo spells. Outrageous, a cat that wasn't even first tier could still master taboo spells? Falling Sun Meteor, Frozen Realm, Divine Slaughter, Blasphemous Eye. What are all these ominous-sounding names? And could there be some strange things mixed in? What's the deal with this guy? Charlotte became increasingly curious. Can you use taboo magic? She asked casually. Not right now. At the moment, I can only use lower-tier spells, but I can still use some decent divine magic. Nice replied awkwardly. Charlotte wanted to ask where it learned legendary and taboo magic, but the black cat began to beat around the bush, obviously not wanting to talk about it. The girl didn't press further, just feeling that this guy was indeed full of secrets, as Sebastian had said. With the spellbook provided by Nice, Charlotte was also excited to try learning a few spells to improve her strength. But unfortunately, she gave up after trying for 2 days, because she realized that she didn't have a magic circuit. In the world of Myria, you needed a magic circuit to learn magic, similar to a knight's source core. But unfortunately, the Bloodborne's body gave Charlotte extraordinary strength, but at the same time, it replaced her original magic circuit. Without finding a solution, she couldn't learn magic outside her Bloodborne talents. In the following days, Charlotte returned to her regular routine. In the morning, she invited priests from the church to lead her in worship and praise the great holy light. In the afternoon, she accompanied the newcomers in training, bonding with them. The only difference was that she drank some blood of the bipedal dragons every day to enhance her strength. Unconsciously, several days passed, and the charging of blood summoning was about to be completed again, and her mastery of majesty magic was getting closer to perfection. However, the effect of drinking the blood of extraordinary creatures became worse and worse. However, Charlotte's strength had improved significantly. Although she hadn't tried, she felt that with the nourishment of the blood, her physical quality should be close to first tier by now. With several days of companionship and friendliness, the fondness of the young boys and girls towards Charlotte also increased. Several apprentice knights even showed signs of falling for her, gradually becoming her loyal followers. It's just that teenagers are really aesthetic creatures. Encountering such a beautiful and gentle master like Charlotte, they couldn't resist surrendering. Except for Sherry. This maid remained as cold as ice. No matter how Charlotte teased her, she always maintained a frosty demeanor. Only when she told dark fairy tales like before would her expression occasionally change. This made teasing Sherry and watching her reactions become another source of enjoyment for Charlotte. For example, sneaking up behind her and touching her flat body when she dressed. Seeing the maid's ears turn slightly red, her body trembling, and her angry gaze when she turned around, Charlotte would then reveal an innocent, pitiful look. Or, quietly approaching her while she cleaned, using the silent steps of the Bloodborne to get close, and blowing in her ear when she wasn't paying attention. Seeing the maid startled and her whole body covered in goosebumps, Charlotte found it truly amusing. Or, like before, adapting a few dark fairy tales and writing them on parchment, secretly placing them in the room she needed to clean. Seeing her pick up the parchment while cleaning and gradually becoming absorbed in the stories before suddenly being surprised and petrified on the spot, Charlotte found it extremely satisfying. Have you had enough fun? Please don't disturb me while I work. Sherry said coldly. Charlotte elegantly lifted her teacup, took a sip of milk, and smiled innocently. This milk is really delicious. Sherry. Of course, Charlotte knew how to play around just enough. She wouldn't push the others' limits too much but would ensure her presence was always felt in their lives. At the same time, she would occasionally give the maid some interesting little gifts based on her observations or show care for her in daily life. With a mix of teasing and care, the relationship between them slowly developed. One step at a time, melting the iceberg. Of course, Charlotte also realized that Sherry's heart was not easily conquered, but she was also a serious person who valued commitments. Having listened to her parents' words and become a maid, she was truly doing her job seriously, although, just her job. She wouldn't leave on her own initiative, but she wouldn't truly pledge her loyalty either. So Charlotte let herself go, set a small goal first, like taking off her cold exterior. Of course, playing around, teasing, and provoking slowly expanded to involve others. Charlotte's daily games, from teasing Sherry alone, evolved into a collective teasing with the new maids. Nobles emphasize etiquette. These maids, inheriting their parents' appearances, were all flawless. Any one of them could have been a goddess in her past life. A group of beautiful and cute little maids together, even if they didn't do anything, the beautiful and incredibly soothing scene was enough to move and trigger the yearning of the young apprentice knights and apprentice mages on the sidelines. Especially the beautiful and lovely young lady who was always surrounded by everyone. Since being transmigrated, Charlotte finally felt another obvious benefit of being a cute girl. Being able to mess around with girls legally and intimately. Indeed, too convenient. And girls really smell nice and soft. Of course, Charlotte didn't know that the thoughts of her maids were exactly the same as hers. Just relieved to be maids to the Castell Miss, it was really fantastic. As the saying goes, when you're eating tofu from someone else, you might be having your tofu eaten by someone else. However, what puzzled Charlotte was that it had been 3 days, and Sebastian, who went to investigate Jordan, had not returned. But she hadn't spent much time with Sebastian, so she didn't know if this occasional disappearance was his usual habit. Beautiful and leisurely times always flew by. Unknowingly, in her busy schedule of milking the sacred power, teasing Sherry, training apprentice knights and mages, and getting along with the pretty and cute maids, it was already the weekend. A week had passed, and the young boys and girls were ready to visit their families, taking the rose-themed disguised carriage back home on Saturday night. With more than 50 people leaving, the lively estate returned to its quiet state. Sunday's weather was gloomy, dark clouds gathered, indicating that it was going to rain. After completing the worship in the morning and the final charge of blood summoning, Charlotte sat quietly in the study, reading a book alone. Sebastian still hadn't returned, and she felt a little uneasy, wondering if something had happened and if she should use blood summoning to contact him. But after hesitating for a moment, she decided to wait one more day. However, until evening, neither Sebastian nor the young boys and girls returned. Charlotte finally felt that something was wrong. Just then, a loud knock came at the door, accompanied by Casimodo's panicked voice. Master, something terrible has happened. The Inquisition has launched a holy judgment against Rose Society, declaring it an evil organization that needs to be purified. The Judgment Knights are on the move. Chapter 61, Rose Society's Crisis. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. As the largest religious force in the Miria world, the Holy Court has 2 extraordinary teams famous across the continent. The first one, there is a large number of them, with bases spread across cities and even major villages, managed by local churches. They are responsible for cleansing sinister demons and protecting ordinary people in their demon hunter headquarters. Their status is somewhat similar to the police officers in the past dynasties of China. The formal members of the demon hunter headquarters are called demon hunter. More often than not, demon hunters bring a sense of safety, justice, and reassurance to ordinary people, rather than fear. Of course, demon hunters have a higher degree of freedom than the clerics of the church. Many of them also engage in some freelance work or wander around like freelance mercenaries, which is tolerated by the church. The second one, independent of the Holy Court and the secular churches, is the Inquisition managed directly by the country authorities. Different from the demon hunters, the Inquisition has its own independent management system from top to bottom and has headquarters in major cities in various countries, responsible for supervising the branches of church districts and judging heresy and evil forces. Their status is somewhat similar to the imperial guards in the history of China. The most famous members of the Inquisition are the Judgment Knights. Compared to the relatively friendly demon hunters, who are even considered as one of life's ideals by many children dreaming of becoming knights, the reputation of the Judgment Knights is much worse among the secular population. Even many local church clerics shudder at the mention of them. The average strength of the Judgment Knights is stronger than that of the demon hunters, and although their numbers are fewer, each one of them is a fanatic, showing no mercy to sinners, heretics, and evil forces. Faith fanatics, neurotics, bloodthirsty maniacs, the church's henchmen, cruel, bloody, ruthless. These are the labels they bear in the eyes of the world. Judgment Knights only recognize faith. The Inquisition is usually not active and has a low profile, but once they are mobilized, it means something significant has happened, and someone is in big trouble. And the result each time is either a high-ranking priest toppled from power, or a big noble family being destroyed, or even an underground secret cult being completely wiped out. Charlotte, who has already caught up on knowledge related to the Holy Court, quickly recalled relevant information about the Inquisition and immediately stood up from her seat. Don't panic, take it slow. What's going on exactly? Why is Rose Society being targeted by the Inquisition? And how many Judgment Knights are mobilized? Charlotte asked seriously. Not too many, I look from afar. There are probably more than 20 Judgment Knights in red clothes, and judging by their badges, the highest should be second-tier Silver Moon, and there are several of them. Casimodo said quickly. No third-tier Blazing Sun? Charlotte was somewhat surprised. According to the records in the books, when the Judgment Knights are mobilized, they usually go all out. As far as she knew, the highest-ranked Judgment Knight stationed in the Board Duchy was third-tier Blazing Sun, just like the Duke and High Priest. Not all Judgment Knights are mobilized. It means the situation hasn't reached the point of no return. She said, then asked again. What exactly happened? Why did the Inquisition target Rose Society? Rose Society is just an underground gang, even if they need to be managed. It should be the local lords who do it. However, this time, Casimodo seemed somewhat at a loss, clearly unable to answer this question. I don't know. I just saw the Judgment Knights team heading aggressively toward the outer city district. Along the way, they directly sealed off a Rose Society shop in the western city district and arrested all the shop assistants. Casimodo said. And I also saw some people in gray clothes. They were likely from the Religious Inquisition troops. Religious Inquisition troops. Charlotte's expression became serious. The Religious Inquisition troops were secular forces directly under the Inquisition, composed of both extraordinary individuals and ordinary people. In the Church's literature, they are an ancient tradition left over from the history of the Holy Court. When the Holy Court was conquering the continent, they were the main force in the Holy Wars. At that time, they had a grandiose title, known as the Holy Legion, disciplined and powerful. Of course, now that the Holy Court is the undisputed overlord of the Miria world, and the Holy Legion has lost its meaning, it has been reorganized into local Religious Inquisition troops. The Religious Inquisition troops are nominally under the command of the Judgment Knights and assist them in their work. However, in practice, the Religious Inquisition troops need the unanimous consent of the Judgment Knights and the local church officials to mobilize, so they usually keep a low profile. In other words, even the High Priest agrees with the actions against Rose Society. Casimodo, quickly contact Frank and the others. Let them transfer to the Castell Manor as soon as possible. For those too far away, find a place to hide quickly. Don't get caught up in this mess. Also, inform Rose Society, those who can evacuate as soon as possible. Charlotte said seriously. Since even Rose Society's shops have been sealed off, it is very likely that the Inquisition intends to eradicate Rose Society entirely. For the peripheral personnel sheltered by Old Frank and others, it is very likely that they are also within the scope of the crackdown. The girl paced in the study, thinking, and continued. Sebastian hasn't sent any news. I wonder if it's related to this. The good thing is that the Judgment Knights will only target the extraordinary individuals. Frank and the others should only face the arrest of the Religious Inquisition troops. Bring some of our family uniforms. Let them change into them. Now everyone in the Board Duchy knows that we are under the protection of the church. Even if it is the religious Inquisition troops, they dare not act recklessly. Charlotte thought for a moment and said. However, upon hearing the girl's words, Casimodo's face turned pale. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. He gritted his teeth and said. No, we can't bring the family uniforms. We can only transfer them over as quietly as possible. If the religious Inquisition troops see our uniforms, the family might also suffer. Charlotte frowned. Why, would they dare to act against nobles protected by the church? Even if they have been reorganized, they used to be disciplined and proud Holy Legion. Casimodo hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to explain to the girl, but it was the Black Cat Nice who suddenly jumped in from outside the window and said seriously. They definitely would. Because they are no longer the Holy Legion you know from the church records. In fact, the current religious Inquisition troops have a much worse reputation than the Inquisition and the Judgment Knights. They have tarnished their names. Charlotte was slightly stunned by Nice's words, then her expression became serious. How so? Nice sighed lightly. Anything can become corrupt and decayed one day, and so did the Holy Legion. They used to be the proudest Holy War Legion of the Holy Court, but after being reorganized into local Inquisition troops, many people lost their goals and motivation, choosing to leave the troops. The reduction in personnel in the Inquisition troops became more severe. Later, in order to maintain combat effectiveness, Nero IV, the 13th Pope of the Holy Court, reformed the local Inquisition troops, announcing that they could recruit sinners willing to repent into the troops. These were a group of people without freedom, who signed soul contracts, and were also cannon fodder, a group of prisoners, criminals, and even former cultists who voluntarily joined the organization to escape religious judgment. Their joining greatly increased the combat effectiveness of the religious Inquisition troops, even surpassing the period of the Holy Legion. But what followed was deteriorating discipline. Now, the local Inquisition troops are like a group of religious slaves, with no human rights in the eyes of the Judgment Knights, and the final outcome is only death in religious judgment time and time again. These people, when they go crazy, are more unrestrained and detestable lunatics than the Judgment Knights. Listening to Nice's words, Charlotte's expression changed. The boys and girls haven't returned yet, and they may have encountered the local religious Inquisition troops. Prepare the carriage for me. I want to go to the cathedral immediately to see the high priest. The girl made a decision immediately. Yes, miss. Casimodo bowed and then hurriedly ran out of the study. I thought you would decide to go to the outer city district immediately. Nice said unexpectedly, jumping to Charlotte's side. I'm not that foolish. Charlotte glanced at it and rang the bell to summon the maids to change her clothes for the trip. She was extremely worried about the boys and girls and Frank and the others. But she knew that the more urgent the situation, the more she should stay calm. If she rushes to the outer city district now without understanding anything, not only will she not be able to solve the problem, but she may also put herself in danger. She had to start with the church. Although the high priest does not have direct jurisdiction over the Judgment Knights, as the highest holy figure of the Holy Court in the Board Duchy, he still has a say in the divine judgment of local groups. Moreover, the high priest also has a certain degree of control over the local religious Inquisition troops. The high priest's tenure as the chief priest also requires Castell's help. It's just a matter of spending more gold Tana. As long as she is willing to spend the money, Charlotte is confident that she can persuade him to stop the divine judgment of the Inquisition. Thinking about it, she took out a stack of parchment from the desk and put it into her arms. What's this? Nice poked its head out. Charlotte glanced at it. Materials prepared to whitewash Rose Society. I originally wanted to wait until later to use them more fully, but it seems I have to use them early now. Since she had decided to accept Sebastian as the steward, Charlotte had already considered how to whitewash an underground gang, Rose Society. She was, after all, a noble, and Rose Society was a gang. Mixing the two together openly would be unacceptable and could become a weapon for other nobles to attack her. She had been sorting out these things in her spare time these days, but fortunately, Rose Society was somewhat capable. Although there was a lot of mess behind them, they had also done many good deeds, so they were somewhat ambiguous. The technique of using the spring and autumn period style to whitewash the Rose Society was not difficult for keyboard warriors in her past life. Explanation at the bottom. This trip to see the high priest is a good opportunity to handle this matter, and solve it once and for all. Under the service of the maids, Charlotte changed into suitable clothes for the trip and specifically chose a holy white dress. Then, she boarded the prepared carriage. Meow, I'm going too. Nice called out and also jumped onto the carriage. Charlotte glanced at it and did not stop it. Although this guy is unreliable, in terms of understanding the church, no one in the manor can compare to it. Bringing it along might yield unexpected gains. The carriage drove off, carrying a girl and a cat, quickly towards the cathedral in the eastern city district. The spring and autumn period refers to a historical text from ancient China, traditionally attributed to Confucius, which chronicles events in the state of Lu from 722 to 481 BCE. It's known for its concise, objective style of recording historical events and is often cited as a model of historical writing. Using the spring and autumn period style in this context likely means adopting a similarly objective and factual approach to documenting the activities of the Rose Society, akin to how events were recorded in the ancient text. Chapter 62. The High Priest is a big problem. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Sorry, Lady Charlotte, the high priest said that he received divine inspiration in his sleep last night, and he needs to pray all day today, so he won't accept any visitors. In the cathedral of the Eastern District, the young apprentice priest, with a slightly red face, looked apologetic as he lowered his head, observing the beautiful girl in front of him who appeared weary from travel. Divine inspiration? Charlotte furrowed her brows slightly. Huh? Divine inspiration? Don't kid me, this is already the 7th time this year that the high priest has received divine inspiration. It seems the great lord really favors the high priest, doesn't he? Behind the girl, Nice swayed its spherical body, speaking in a teasing manner. The apprentice priest looked somewhat embarrassed. He didn't know how to respond, but before he could, Nice, with a loud voice, shouted in the cathedral. High priest, it's me, Nice. Miss Charlotte of the Castell family is here to visit you. Regarding the previous blood demon case, Miss Charlotte remembered some details she wants to report to you. It's about the thorn roses and the evil. Before Nice could finish saying God, the door to the central prayer room smashed open, and the figure of High Priest Leonard Decon appeared before everyone. He looked stern, staring coldly at the black cat who was about to say God, and rebuked with displeasure. What's with this commotion in the cathedral's sacred grounds? Seeing the High Priest appear, Nice immediately dashed behind Charlotte, then pretended to look around and whistle while admiring the scenery. High Priest. Charlotte bowed to the High Priest. Seeing Charlotte, the High Priest's expression was slightly unnatural, but he quickly regained his composure. He once again became the kind old man, smiling kindly and saying, "Oh, it's Miss Charlotte. I wonder what Miss Charlotte has come to see me for." He naturally glossed over the thorn roses and the evil god. Charlotte, being aware and understanding all the intricacies, didn't dwell on this issue and went straight to the point. High Priest, I'm here about Rose Society. Just now, I received news that the Inquisition has taken action against Rose Society, launching a divine judgment. The High Priest looked thoughtful. Oh, so it's about this matter. Saying that, he interrupted the girl, glanced at the increasingly curious glances from inside the cathedral, then gestured to the empty prayer room behind him. It's not convenient to talk here, come inside. With that, he took the lead into the prayer room. As Charlotte was about to follow, she suddenly stopped in her tracks. Her gaze fell on the table in the prayer room. There, 2 empty cups had already been set. One was an old crystal cup, the other an empty goblet. Beside the goblet, there was still a pot of steaming milk. Next to the table, there wasn't the usual penitential pad for prayer, but instead, a soft chair, large enough for 2 people to lie down on. Charlotte's gaze froze for a moment. Miss Charlotte, won't you come in and sit? Entering the prayer room, the high priest sitting in the chair smiled gently, patting the empty seat next to him. With her rich experience in some aspects from 2 lives, Charlotte immediately became wary. She stood at the door, shook her head slightly, bowed to the high priest, and said with apology, "High priest, thank you for your kindness, but let's talk in the hall. The matter I want to discuss concerns the reputation of the Castell family, and if possible, I hope all the priests in the hall can be witnesses." With that, Charlotte straightened her back, her expression carrying the stubbornness of a young girl who wanted to uphold her family's honor. The high priest raised an eyebrow. He looked deeply at the girl, then suddenly smiled slightly. "All right." He slowly got up, walked out of the prayer room, and said, "I heard you went to the outskirts to meet with Rose Society a few days ago. Miss Charlotte, forgive me for speaking frankly, but the Inquisition has already declared Rose Society an evil organization. You should reduce your dealings with them. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. Take a look at what they've been up to these past years." Saying that, the high priest sighed deeply, instructed a nearby priest to fetch a scroll of parchment, and handed it to the girl. Charlotte took it, her eyelids raised slightly. It turned out to be an anonymous report, and on the report, various crimes of Rose Society in recent years were listed. However, from the information obtained from Sebastian about Rose Society, Charlotte, who was familiar with what Rose Society had been up to, quickly noticed familiar traces in this information. Like the whitewashing materials she had prepared these days, these materials were also written with the same spring and autumn penmanship, and some were even outright fabricated. Charlotte instantly understood that someone was targeting Rose Society. At that moment, a hint of hesitation arose in the girl's heart as to whether she should continue to stand up for Rose Society. Right now, she just wanted to quietly wait until she formally inherited the estate and quickly leave this place of trouble and intrigue, without getting involved in any more conspiracies. But she quickly quashed that hint of hesitation. Although Rose Society was an underground gang, they always exercised restraint in their actions and, as Sebastian put it, did not cross the bottom line of the church and nobility, which was their way of survival. But now they were being targeted, obviously for doing something different from before. And considering the recent movements of Rose Society, the only difference from before was that they had made contact with her, the heirs of the Castell family, and even stood on her side, so to speak. This wasn't a secret, it just took a look at Sebastian's clumsy disguise to know. Everyone turned a blind eye, but in fact, they all knew what was going on in their hearts. They're coming after me. Rose Society now provided some kind of protection for me, and those who were secretly targeting Rose Society wanted to get rid of this protection. They and the Blood Demon cult that had previously assassinated me were likely the same group of people. And once Rose Society was eliminated, they would probably target me next. Charlotte's expression gradually became serious, and she quickly made such a judgment. "How about it, Miss Charlotte, do you now realize how serious the situation is?" sighed the high priest. Charlotte fell silent. She quickly calculated in her mind, and soon had a plan. She suddenly sighed softly and said, "High priest, this is slander." "Oh?" The high priest raised an eyebrow. Charlotte took a deep breath and began to blather. "High priest, these materials, I'm afraid they were fabricated by the Blood Demon cult. Perhaps you don't know, but the leader of Rose Society, Sebastian, pledged allegiance to the Castell family 10 years ago. The underground gang, Rose Society of Board, is actually a peripheral force of the Castell family, and the leader Sebastian established Rose Society for the purpose of investigating the Blood Demon cult and avenging my parents. The Rose Society may seem like a gang, but in recent years, they have been maintaining the underground order of Board. They are also the power of the Castell family, and sooner or later they will be the power of the church too." After hearing Charlotte's words, the high priest suddenly realized. "Oh, so that's how it is, it's wrong for family members to blame each other." With that, he looked embarrassed. "But I can't directly order the Inquisition. How about this, I'll write a letter to the Judgment Knights who are in action, asking them not to kill, and after the misunderstanding is cleared up, release the people of Rose Society. What do you think? However, the Judgment Knights stationed in Board are not easy to deal with. How about this, tonight I will invite the Chief Knight to the mansion for a banquet. You can also come over personally, and we can all have a good chat. Once the misunderstanding is cleared up, everything will be easy to say." The high priest said with a smile. Looking at his kind smile, Charlotte's heart sank. She realized that the high priest was just trying to brush things off. He didn't want to stand up for Rose Society, or even, for the Castell family. Not only that, he seemed to have some special interest in her. And combined with his behavior today, Charlotte also realized a somewhat creepy fact. The high priest probably is a big problem. Chapter 63, Charlotte's response. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Charlotte soon came out of the cathedral. She realized that the high priest couldn't be relied upon. This was very unusual, to be so blatant even in the cathedral hall, knowing that as the high priest, he relied on Castell's support, yet he was being negligent, which greatly affected the trust between them. The only explanation was that the high priest no longer cared about cooperation. He had found better collaborators, or perhaps, he had given up on the Castell family. If that was the case, considering that the high priest hadn't openly turned against her, it seemed he still wanted to portray the church as the Castell family shelter, which led Charlotte to deeper speculation. The high priest probably reached some kind of unilateral agreement with a force against her. And perhaps, the bargaining chip for both sides was her and her family. This bold conjecture sent shivers down Charlotte's spine. After all, she speculated that the force against her was likely related to the Blood Demon cult, and from that perspective, could it be that the high priest was also connected to the Blood Demon cult? He was the highest-ranking clergyman in the Holy Court of Board branch. Even if the church was corrupt, God truly exists in this world. Charlotte had also read the doctrines of the Holy Court, which were indeed the doctrines of true gods, with the overall trend being towards goodness. The power of believers comes from the gods, so wouldn't the corruption of the church affect the gods? Do the gods not care at all about their faith gradually deteriorating? Leaving the cathedral, she couldn't help but speak. It was unclear whether she was speaking to herself or conversing with the black cat following behind her. Hey, faith deteriorating? Why would the gods care? The God is God, faith is faith. Master Cat once heard someone say that gods are just a group of parasites wrapped in hypocrisy and selfishness. As long as there are believers, they don't care if faith deteriorates. Parasites? Charlotte's heart stirred. She couldn't help but look at Nice, and noticing the girl's gaze, the black cat suddenly felt that what it had said was somewhat offensive, and quickly laughed awkwardly and changed its tone. Cough, Master Cat didn't mean you, you're not relying on faith to live. Master Cat meant those gods who spread faith. You know quite a bit about the gods? Charlotte was somewhat surprised. A little bit, just heard some random things from others. Nice said somewhat nervously. Are you really a follower of the contracted god? Charlotte asked again. I guess. Nice said cautiously. Charlotte. She quietly looked at Nice, while the black cat began to look away again, whistling to himself. Charlotte remained silent for a few seconds, then suddenly commanded. Turn all your understanding of the gods into a book and give it to me. To survive well in the Miria world, it was necessary to further understand the true rulers of this world. Perhaps the black cat was a good starting point. Through the incident with the high priest, Charlotte suddenly realized that she might know too little about the gods of this world, and there might even be some misunderstanding about the relationship between faith and the gods. She always thought that priests could only gain divine power by strictly adhering to the beliefs of the gods. The stronger the priest, the more devout the belief, and the more their actions would conform to the teachings of the church. This led her to misjudge the actions of the high priest. Listening to the girl's words, Nice was about to feign ignorance again, but the thorn rose imprint between its brows suddenly flashed, causing it to stiffen. All right. It scratched its head. After that, it sighed again. I suddenly understand why many resurrected gods hide from their believers during the resurrection period. Why? The girl glanced at it. Just looking at you, you'll understand. It seems that, as rumored, there is a price to pay for the resurrection of gods, such as memory loss and so on. Just like you, if it weren't for seeing your power and your understanding of extraordinary powers, without knowing, I might really have mistaken you for a true mortal. For high-ranking gods, they definitely don't want their believers to see their pathetic appearance, right? I am just a mortal, Charlotte said lightly. There was nothing to conceal about this. She was really just a mortal, or rather, a bloodborn. She just happened to have a divine artifact in her hand, and the divine artifact happened to recognize her as its master. Perhaps this made her exhibit some of the traits of gods, but Charlotte never thought of herself as a true resurrected god. Maybe in front of Sebastian, who pledged allegiance to her without understanding why, she needed to disguise herself as Lady of the Night. After all, he was a true powerhouse. But in front of Nice, whose fate was already in her hands, she didn't need to pretend. However, upon hearing Charlotte's words, Nice showed a look of disbelief. The expression seemed to say, "Here you go again, stop pretending, I understand, I get it. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. Charlotte." She slowly withdrew her gaze from it, not continuing to dwell on this issue. Obviously, the high priest was not as straightforward as everyone imagined. This highest-ranking clergyman of the board church had his secrets. Relying on the power of the church to confront the forces behind the scenes was no longer feasible on the surface. Ultimately, it was because her own power was too weak, forcing her to rely on others to mediate between the major forces. She was facing the most powerful force in the duchy before she even grew up. Whether it was the blood demon cult, the duke's mansion, the deeply rooted noble families, or the church, none of the powerful forces was something she could confront head-on. It was like encountering a map boss before leaving the novice village. However, Charlotte was not afraid, nor was she intimidated. On the contrary, it ignited her fighting spirit. Yes, this start was difficult, but the gods had already set the rules for this world, and although the gap between extraordinary powers was huge, they still had to operate within the rules. Nobles had their own rules, and the church had its own rules, and these rules were the political correctness of this world. She didn't believe that she really couldn't find a way to break through the intricate situation of board and inherit her territory to fly away. She would revitalize this game. It's better to rely on oneself than on others. It seems, she needs to leverage her current greatest advantage. I heard, the Demon Hunter Bureau has always had a bad relationship with the Inquisition? Charlotte suddenly asked. Yes, the responsibilities of the Demon Hunter Bureau and the Inquisition overlap to some extent, but the two sides have different philosophies. The Inquisition has always wanted to absorb the Demon Hunter Bureau, but the Demon Hunter Knights only have faith in their eyes. Many times, even the rigid Judgment Knights cannot stand them. You should also know that for mortals, the boundary between black and white is not so clear. In this respect, although under the jurisdiction of the church, the Demon Hunter Knights who often take private jobs can see much more clearly than the Judgment Knights. Listening to Nice's words, Charlotte pondered. After a moment of contemplation, she said, Nice, I have something for you to do. What is it? Just order. The black cat straightened its body. I'll give you 100,000 gold tana, and hire all the Demon Hunter Knights that in board that can be hired. Nice. It widened its eyes instantly, unable to help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. 100,000 gold tana? Not enough? Charlotte frowned. 100,000 gold tana was already the largest amount she could afford at the moment. A few days ago, she had another item sold by Kasimoto, and now the family account had a total of 130,000 gold tana. No, it's more than enough. If you just want to hire people, this money is enough to hire 20 or 30 first-tier extraordinaries for a month. If it's just for a day, calling 300 or 400 first-tier extraordinaries from the black market is very likely. Even the second-tier Silver Moon can be hired, and you can definitely afford a considerable number of Demon Hunter Knights. Of course, this is theoretically speaking. Nice said. The hiring cost of first-tier extraordinaries was so high? Charlotte was somewhat surprised, but soon, she understood. With power crushing from all directions and identity equivalent to the lowest-ranking noble, it was normal for the price to be high. However, the Castell Manor was not short of money. The collections in those houses were enough for her to squander. If the money is not enough, you can promise first, I allow you to go unlimited. Charlotte said after some thought. Nice. It had already become numb to the wealth of the Castell family. Are you planning to use the Demon Hunter Knights to stop the Judgment Knights? Forgive my bluntness. While they may be hired for private jobs, they definitely won't participate in something as big as the Divine Judgment. Nice said. Then tell them that I have a great opportunity to slap the faces of the Judgment Knights hard. This Divine Judgment is already illegal. Let's see if they are willing to come. And, there's no need for them to act against the Judgment Knights. Just stand behind me, and protect my retainers. Ask them if they are willing to be witnesses. Charlotte said. Slapping the faces of the Judgment Knights? Nice was stunned. Suddenly, it seemed to realize something, and its eyes lit up. Oh, I understand. Hee, I understand. Hee, you're so wicked. Hee, but I like it. However, second-tier Silver Moon usually doesn't lack money either, and it would be difficult to invite them. Especially Captain Kara, she's never interested in hiring. Then tell her that I have news about the Blood Demon cult. Charlotte said lightly. Chapter 64, Rose Society's Encirclement. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Like wandering serpents, lightning slashed through the night sky, and the booming thunder resembled rushing torrents. The howling winds and bean-sized raindrops, like countless pearls, hammered down from the canopy, turning the uneven streets of the outer city district into a muddy mess. On both sides of the street, every household tightly shut their doors, even extinguishing the candlelight, as if afraid of attracting attention. In the heart of the outer city district lies the Rose Manor. This is the largest estate in the outer city district and also the core base of the Rose Society. And at this moment, in this beautiful garden filled with roses, a fierce battle is taking place. A huge translucent divine magic barrier shrouded the entire estate, with mysterious runes faintly visible swirling around it. Inside the barrier, under the leadership of the Judgment Knights clad in red and white uniforms, hundreds of novice Judgment Knights were battling against the last stubborn resistance of Rose Society's extraordinaires, led by a Judgment Knight wearing a red divine robe. The Judgment Knights shimmered with a golden light on their bodies under the illumination of the divine magic barrier, as if forming an impenetrable shield. They paid no attention to the attacks of Rose Society's extraordinary, effortlessly defeating one opponent after another. Amidst the intertwining sounds of wind, rain, and thunder, cries of agony, angry curses, and clashes of swords, chants of spells were faintly audible. On the ground, trampled rose petals scattered all over, mingling with crimson blood to form streams, but they were soon washed clean by the rain. Several Judgment Knights, draped in red cloaks and wielding silver swords in the shape of a cross, sat on dragon-scale horses, coldly observing the manor amid the storm. Their chests embroidered with Silver Moon marked them as the leading second-tier Silver Moon Judgment Knights. The leader appeared to be a middle-aged man in his 40s, with gray curly hair, a hooked nose, and pale gray eyes filled with indifference. The bean-sized raindrops fell, but about 10 centimeters away from him, they slid freely to both sides, forming a rain-free zone around him, not even wetting his clothes. Discharge of source power. This is the greatest symbol of the second-tier Silver Moon Knights. Glancing at the sky, his gaze fell on the divine magic barrier shrouding the estate, and he coldly inquired, "Have they been sealed with Judgment Prison?" The accompanying Judgment Knight respectfully replied, "Yes, Lord Rajiv, it has been sealed, and no evildoers within the manor will be spared. Pay attention to the underground. These kinds of gangs often build secret tunnels to escape through underground. Don't let them get away. Although the city gates have been closed, it will still be troublesome to search in the outer city district." Rajiv, the second-tier Judgment Knight, said lightly. Understood. The Judgment Knight bowed and then led several novice Judgment Knights into the estate. Meanwhile, second-tier Knight Rajiv continued to coldly watch the manor amidst the storm. He was not worried about the outcome of this battle to eradicate Rose Society. In fact, with the Judgment Prison enveloping the manor, the second-tier Knights didn't even need to take action. Although the Rose Society wielded supernatural powers, the vast majority were zero-tier extraordinaires, and there were not many who had reached the first-tier Starry Sky. As for those who had reached the second tier or above, there was only one person, the president of Rose Society, Sebastian Flameheart. And now, Sebastian Flameheart was not even in the manor, so the leaderless Rose Society was no match for the Judgment Knights. The battle quickly came to a close. No. It was more like a one-sided crushing from the beginning. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. The Rose Society was ultimately an underground gang, and a relatively new one at that, founded less than 10 years ago. Without their powerful leader, such a force was no match for the fully armed Judgment Knights. One after another, the Rose Society's extraordinaires were captured and bound by the Judgment Knights, then escorted to the empty ground in front of the manor. Roughly speaking, there were probably no less than 200 people, with half of them being extraordinary. They were men and women of various ages and even different races. The vast majority were humans, but there were also many demi-humans, underground dwarves, and even half-elves. The Judgment Knights had already entered the interior of the estate's buildings and began the final search. Soon, 2 Judgment Knights hurried out of the estate, pressing a demi-human maid between them. They came before several second-tier Judgment Knights, pushed the maid to the ground, and then knelt in front of their superior, respectfully saying, "Lord Rajiv, we have captured the steward maid of Sebastian Flameheart, the president of Rose Society. She destroyed Rose Society's documents, and we failed to catch up in time. The roster of Rose Society members has been burned by her. She tried to commit suicide, but we stopped her. However, we failed not stop her from biting off her tongue." In addition, through questioning some peripheral members of the Rose Society, we learned that when we set out, Rose Society had already received the news and started evacuating personnel. Many people, especially the peripheral members, may have already fled. Saying this, the 2 Judgment Knights lowered their heads in shame. Upon hearing the Judgment Knight's words, Rajiv, the leading knight, was indifferent. He said lightly, "It doesn't matter, I already have the list of Rose Society members here. This is not a secret either, anyone with determination can find it. The city gates have been closed, and I have ordered the Judgment forces to track down these underground vermin. Their people, including those peripheral members, won't get away." As he spoke, he took out a scroll from his chest. If Charlotte were here, she would recognize that the scroll contained the report information shown to her by the High Priest. Moreover, this scroll contained even more comprehensive information than the one copied by the High Priest, including the list of Rose Society members. And above the list, names such as Frank, Mina, and others were prominently listed. Upon hearing Rajiv's words, the expression of the Judgment Knights was somewhat hesitant. "Lord Rajiv, sending the Judgment forces to track them down, will it not have a negative impact on the city? They won't be cooperative. This is Board City, even in the outer city district. In Board, what else is there that has a more detrimental impact than Rose Society, this kind of filthy and evil organization?" Rajiv shook his head slightly. "Those who are sensible will stay indoors at this time. As for those who dare to shelter Rose Society at this time, they should know their fate. Don't worry, most of the peripheral members are not extraordinary, and they have no value in joining the Judgment forces. If they die, they die. This is also the price they pay for joining Rose Society." The second-tier Judgment Knight said coldly. Chapter 65, Dare to Try Touch My People. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. In the abandoned western district of Board, within a dilapidated courtyard. Mina leaned against the corner of the wall, her face pale, consciousness blurred, a fierce wound piercing through her chest, the crimson blood already staining her entire outfit. 2 beautiful young daughters gathered by her side, tears streaming down as they held their mother's hand. The limp Frank held a piece of tile, collecting rainwater through the leaking roof, bringing it to his wife's lips. "Mina, don't sleep, have some water." His condition wasn't much better than his wife, a terrifying sword wound had nearly severed his right arm, and it was only hastily bandaged. It was the wound he sustained while defending his wife and daughters. In fact, if their elder daughter, Sherry, hadn't returned in time and angrily killed the intruding knights, he, his wife, and even their 2 daughters might have already perished under the knights' blades. "Father, mother, how are you?" Sherry, holding a longsword, entered the dilapidated house, approaching her parents with a cold voice tinged with a slight tremor. Seeing his eldest daughter's blood-stained maid's dress, Frank sighed deeply. He was about to answer when Mina suddenly struggled to grasp his hand, intermittently saying, "Frank, don't mind me. Hurry, take Sally and Mary and leave the city. Rose is going to be judged, don't go find Sherry, or Lady Charlotte. That will only bring trouble to them." Mina's consciousness was already becoming unclear. She spoke intermittently, her memory seeming to linger on the moment when the knights broke into the shop. Frank touched his wife's forehead. The combination of severe injuries and rain had caused her to develop a high fever. However, during their escape, they didn't even dare to light a torch. He knew his wife wouldn't last much longer, and he also knew that he couldn't run too far in his current condition. Taking a deep breath, he glanced at Sherry entering the room and gritted his teeth. "Sherry, take Sally and Mary and go to 17 Old Street. It's a shop our family owns in the outer district. Although the city gates are closed and we can't leave the city or enter the inner city, there might be a way to contact Castell Manor there. Mina and I probably won't hold on much longer. Take them and go there. Seek refuge from our family." The attackers at the shop were too strange. They arrived much earlier than the Judgment Knights, and they weren't wearing iron chains, which means they're not true Judgment Knights. This so-called sacred judgment against Rose Society, someone is orchestrating it in the dark. However, upon hearing her father's words, the young girl remained motionless. "Sherry," Frank repeated angrily. Sherry didn't respond but quietly rolled up her sleeve. On her wrist hung a bracelet in the shape of an eagle. Frank's eyes widened slightly. He recognized it. It was the magic bracelet of the Castell family, the symbol of the core servants of Castell. It had only one function, to locate within a certain range. In the past, almost every core follower of the Castell family had one. When they were members of the Mage Corps and the Maid Corps, Frank and Mina also had one, but they were taken back when they were expelled from the family. Obviously, Castell valued Sherry's group very much, already considering them as future core followers. However, several hours had passed since the earliest attack, and the true Judgment Knights had already been mobilized for half a day. Even they had been evading the true Knights' pursuit and engagement for a long time, even fighting more than once. But so far, there had been no news from the Castell family, which made Frank fall into silence. With such a big commotion in the outer district, the Castell family couldn't possibly be unaware of what happened to the Rose Society. "Father, we have been abandoned once again," Sherry said softly. "No, it's impossible. The family must be entangled in something. Maybe they're negotiating with the church. Take Sally and Mary and go quickly." Frank stubbornly shook his head, seemingly trying to convince himself. Sherry wanted to say something more, but suddenly raised her sword and looked out into the courtyard through the broken window. With a loud bang, the courtyard gate was smashed from outside. Disorderly footsteps echoed, and faintly, a flattering voice could be heard. "Gee, gentlemen. Those people who just entered this courtyard, they're all injured and in a hurry. They must be the evildoers of Rose Society. Yes, I can smell the stench of Rose Society on them, you're right." A hoarse voice chimed in. Then, sirs, may I be allowed to leave?" "Of course." After the hoarse voice spoke, there was the sound of a crossbow bolt piercing flesh from outside the room. Accompanied by a scream, the flattering voice disappeared completely. Dazzling lightning illuminated everything in the courtyard. Entering the courtyard were 7 or 8 figures wearing grey robes, their hands and feet bound with iron chains. They were religious Inquisition troops. The lightning illuminated the courtyard, as well as the house, and the figures of Sherry and her companions. Through the tattered window, several cruel eyes glanced over, one of them squinting slightly. I recognize them, Frank and Nina. They were peripheral members of Rose Society when I joined the Inquisition. That girl should be his daughter, if I remember correctly. She's also an extraordinary. The leading knight sneered. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. The Inquisition judged that all members of Rose Society, including peripheral members, must be executed. Judging from their appearance, they probably wouldn't resist much, did they? After saying that, his expression turned cold, and a bloodthirsty excitement flashed in his eyes, as he said viciously. Kill them. After his command, they drew their weapons and rushed towards the small house. Sherry also tightened her grip on her silver sword. She stood at the doorway of the small house, her cold eyes seemingly filled with determination, like a knight guarding her family. The battle soon erupted between the girl and the knights. Sherry didn't know how many times she had repelled these knights' attacks. Nor did she know how many times these people had swarmed her. Although they were both extraordinary, the sacred chains ultimately limited the strength of the opponents, and these people were not her match. However, even so, with their rich combat experience, these people were slowly wearing her down. A sharp pain came from her lower left abdomen. Another sneaky sword left a wound on her body. Her maid's dress was already tattered, and her clothes were completely dyed in blood. Sherry felt her strength waning. However, the adjudicators besieging her remained unhurried, even though the balance of victory was tilting in their favor. They're toying with me, enjoying watching me weaken little by little, waiting for me to collapse on my own. Seeing those mocking and excited gazes, Sherry quickly understood the enemy's intentions. Sherry, run, don't mind us. Her father's anxious voice came from behind. Sherry didn't move. Her parents were behind her sisters were behind her, and she couldn't abandon them. Even if the outcome of this battle was death, she would die with her family. Torrential rain poured down, raindrops dripped down the girl's cheeks. The enemy's sneer, the pain of her wounds, the chilling raindrops, made Sherry feel as if she had returned to that night 10 years ago. That rainy night, after her parents, who had dedicated everything to Castell, lost their power, they were expelled from the manor. Suffering from a high fever, she was sore all over, but could only wander with her parents in the rain, hiding from those enemies who dared not attack Castell but dared to target them, who had once been loyal to Castell. The beautiful childhood memories of the manor were like a dream, but when they lost their value, when Castell needed a scapegoat, her powerless parents became victims. Castell abandoned them. The family that once called them their members, abandoned them. And now, 10 years later, when Castell found them again, it was because Castell was also facing a crisis, and Castell needed new blood. How ironic. When they weren't needed, they were cast aside, and when they were needed again, they were remembered. And now, when the crisis came again, Castell had indeed abandoned them once more. Sherry didn't know what she was feeling right now. Perhaps the interactions of the past few days, the warm smiles of the young lady and the mischief after, had touched her heart slightly, and for a moment, there was a flicker of hope. Of course, it was just a flicker. Castell was still Castell. When the church's iron fist came down, they abandoned their people once again. Sherry hated extraordinary power. She hated it very much. If her parents hadn't had extraordinary power from the beginning, perhaps they could have lived peacefully as ordinary people, not being absorbed by Castell as core members, and not ending up like this. If she didn't have extraordinary power, perhaps her parents wouldn't have hoped for her to return to Castell, but would have left with her to lead their own lives. However, at this moment, Sherry also longed for extraordinary power. If she could be stronger, maybe she would be able to defeat these enemies now, and she could leave with her parents and sisters. And never to come back. Unfortunately, there are no ifs. The girl's strength gradually weakened, almost reaching its limit. Finally, she exhausted the last ounce of her strength, and the long sword in her hand was directly knocked away by the knight's attack. The knight kicked over, kicking weakened Sherry in the abdomen. She couldn't help but spurt out a mouthful of blood, falling directly to the ground, unable to get up again. Sherry. Behind her, came the anxious cry of her father. Sherry saw her father struggling with his heavy injuries as he rushed over, shielding her in front of him. Just like when she was a child. Such touching father-daughter affection. The knight walked over with a sinister smile. Their expressions were ferocious, no different from before they became judgment knights, some still wearing the sacred chains of the Holy Court on their hands and feet. But clearly, these chains couldn't save the girl and her family. They were a group of crazed dogs nurtured by the church, and now, they had been let out. The knight raised his long sword high, his gaze toward Sherry and old Frank filled with indifference. Meanwhile, inside the house, accompanied by the rushing knights, the cries of her younger sisters grew louder and louder. Looking at the cold sword, Sherry gently closed her eyes, a hint of despair surging in her heart. It's over. Everything is over. However, just as the sword was about to pierce old Frank's chest, accompanied by a breaking sound, a crossbow bolt shot out, directly hitting the head of the attacking knight. The force of the crossbow bolt was so great that it directly sent the knight flying, stumbling a few steps before sitting down on the ground, never to make another sound. Amid the pouring rain, the dilapidated cottage suddenly ushered in a moment of quiet. And following closely, was a cold, tender voice. You dare try to touch any of my people. Chapter 66, Sobbing Cries. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Who is it? Watching their companion perish in an instant, the remaining judgment knights immediately became alert. They tightened their grip on their long swords, heightened their focus to the utmost, and cast their sinister gazes toward the direction from which the crossbow bolts had come. In the darkness, a petite figure stood at the courtyard's entrance. Another lightning bolt streaked across the sky, illuminating the darkness. The knights could now see her clearly. She was a girl who appeared to be around 13 or 14 years old. She wore a white dress, her features delicate and lovely. However, at this moment, her expression was devoid of emotion. In her hand, she held a hand crossbow that had just fired the bolts, and her crimson eyes gazed coldly at the knights at the door. The knights' expressions immediately turned serious. Walking through the abandoned city at this special time of night, she couldn't possibly be an ordinary girl. Especially the invisible pressure emanating from her made them feel apprehensive even while under the influence of the sacred chains. What made them even more wary was that although she stood in the rain, her body was not wet at all, as if an invisible barrier shielded her from the rain. This made the knights tense up. Power discharge? Or, a magical barrier? Power discharge meant second tier silver moon. And if it was a magical barrier, they felt no fluctuations of magic. That meant the wielder of magic had reached a terrifying level of mastery, perhaps even more formidable than the second tier silver moon upon further thought. And coupled with her unbelievably young age. Who was she exactly? Or rather, what was she? The knight's expressions gradually became serious. Master, it's the master. A weak yet surprised voice came from inside the house. Sherry also trembled slightly, slowly raising her head, looking at the familiar figure under the rainy night with an incredulous expression. It was none other than Charlotte de Castell, the head of the Castell family and the heir of Count Title, who was only 15 years old. Master? A noble? The knight squinted slightly. Miss, we are from the Inquisition, and we are apprehending members of Rose Society. Please do not obstruct the church's actions. One of the knights said solemnly. For renegades nurtured by the church, such polite words already indicated their fear of the girl. They didn't even speak for the corpse lying on the ground. However, Charlotte did not engage in conversation with him. She slowly lowered the hand crossbow, saying indifferently, Nice, what crime is it to illegally attack peaceful citizens and loyal subjects of nobles? According to the Crescent Code, illegally attacking civilians as an extraordinary will be severely punished by the local lord, and if the lord is absent, it can be punished by a noble loyal to the lord. With a hoarse voice, a fat black cat walked out of the darkness and stood by the girl's side. It stayed half a step behind the girl, adopting a respectful posture, implicitly acknowledging her as the master. Its body, too, remained untouched by rainwater. A talking black cat? The knights were stunned. As cannon fodder squads nurtured by the Inquisition, they had never been in contact with the core circles of the Board Church and were unfamiliar with Nice. What if it's an attack on a noble's vassal? Charlotte continued casually. According to the sacred code, illegally attacking a noble's vassal by an extraordinary, the assaulter will be handed over to the noble for punishment, and depending on the severity of the harm, the highest penalty is death. Nice continued with a smirk. Very well. Charlotte nodded slightly. She gracefully took out a crossbow bolt from her skirt, skillfully loaded it, and looked at the members of the Inquisition team, smiling faintly. Mr. Knights, you have attacked the vassals of the Castell family and the civilians loyal to the Castell family. As the head of the Castell family, I will represent the Castell family in meting out punishment to you. With that, she coldly locked eyes with one of the knights, using her sensitivity to blood as a bloodborne to quickly identify him. The sword in that person's hand was still dripping with blood, and that blood belonged to Sherry and smelled quite sweet and delicious. Glancing at the wound on the maid Sherry's abdomen, Charlotte raised her hand crossbow and aimed it at the knight's abdomen. A breaking sound rang out, and the adjudicator's expression changed slightly as he quickly rolled to the side, dodging the incoming bolt. You dodged it. Charlotte smiled even more happily. Nice, isn't this resistance? The black cat chuckled. Of course, great Miss Charlotte, undoubtedly he is resisting your punishment. The girl's expression suddenly became indifferent. So, do you know what to do now? We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. Of course, great Miss Charlotte, attacking peaceful civilians who love peace, attacking noble vassals, resisting noble punishment. These people are undoubtedly evil terrorists. For these evil terrorists, death is their only destiny. The black cat said solemnly. Listening to the conversation between the girl and the cat, the knights' faces gradually become serious and ugly. They glanced at each other, without hesitation. Retreat. However, before they could retreat, a hoarse incantation spewed from the black cat's mouth. Contract, banishment to the void. As soon as the words fell, the space around the knights immediately began to distort. Feeling the tearing of the void, the knights' expressions changed drastically. Wait, we are from the Inquisition. A terrifying void vortex appeared behind the knights like a small black hole. They didn't finish their words before they disappeared into the suddenly appearing void vortex. Except for the corpse on the ground, it was as if they had never appeared. On the other side, Frank was already stunned. Oh my god, a cat that can perform contract magic? Even Sherry was slightly stunned, obviously greatly impressed by Nice's performance. Only Charlotte furrowed her brows slightly. She looked at the wet corner of her skirt with some dissatisfaction. Your magic affected the magic shield. Sorry, well, after all, banishment to the void is also a high-level magic, and my shield is only low level. Nice scratched its head. Do you need to use banishment to the void to deal with a few extraordinaires who haven't even reached first tier? Hey, isn't it according to your instructions to give them the most severe punishment? They can only be gradually devoured by the void, from flesh to soul, in the boundless void. Oh, how come I see that you just want to use up your energy because in a while I'll let you deal with the church's true judgment knights? What are you talking about? Why can't Nice understand? Meow meow meow. As they spoke, the duo walked away, leaving Frank staring blankly. They arrived in front of Sherry. Looking at the heavily injured Sherry and the unconscious Mrs. Mina, Charlotte apologized. I'm sorry, I almost arrived too late. Hearing the girl's words, Frank was excited. Master. Don't move. Charlotte stopped his movement. Nice, healing scrolls. She reached out to the black cat. The black cat nodded, and with a swipe of its paw in the void, 3 scrolls appeared in front of it, causing Charlotte's eyes to widen in surprise. Then, holding the scrolls in its mouth, it obediently handed them to the girl. Charlotte took the scrolls and casually stuffed the still warm hand crossbow into its paw before infusing the scrolls with bloodborne magic to heal Sherry and the Frank couple. The scrolls were made by Nice, just the lowest level inferior healing spells, but even so, in a halo of light, Mrs. Mina's breathing gradually stabilized, and the faces of old Frank and Sherry improved significantly. That's enough. The rest of the treatment could be left to the church's demon hunter knights. Sherry remained silent, while the 2 beautiful little girls threw themselves into Charlotte's arms, crying. Charlotte, sister. Be good, don't be afraid, I'm here. Charlotte embraced the 2 little ones gently, soothing them. At this moment, a series of hoofbeats could be heard from outside, and the worried voice of Chatham, the captain of the demon hunting knights, echoed from afar. Miss Charlotte, your carriage is too fast. There are now those rubbish Inquisition troops everywhere. It's very dangerous for you to drive alone. Oh, by the way, where did you buy your horse? It's so fast, can you get some for our demon hunter squad too? As he spoke, Chatham led a few demon hunter knights in, and when he saw the heavily injured people in the night with an arrow in his head, he was momentarily taken aback. Seeing the demon hunter knights who followed, Charlotte's eyes reddened slightly, her delicate and lovely face suddenly filled with infinite fear and grievance. Holding the 2 crying little girls, she pointed at the knight's corpse on the ground, her azure eyes misty, her voice filled with sorrow and anger. Captain Chatham, not only did the Inquisition troops from the Inquisition lay hands on my vassals, they even wanted to attack me after I revealed my identity. If it wasn't for Lord Nice arriving in time, I might never see you again. Wah. The girl shrank with the 2 crying little girls in her arms, tears streaming down her face, looking pitiful. Frank. Sherry. Chatham hesitated, his gaze naturally falling on the black cat. More precisely, on the hand crossbow tightly held in the excited black cat's 2 paws. Nice. With a thud, the hand crossbow in its paw fell to the ground. Chapter 67. Lord Nice said it will take the blame. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Nice, your decisiveness in dealing with those scum raised by the Inquisition is truly admirable. Watching the hand crossbow drop in front of the black cat, Chatham, the captain of the demon hunter squad, showed admiration. Although the demon hunter bureau and the Inquisition were not on good terms, one still had to be careful when taking action. Even if action was necessary, it was best not to cause casualties, let alone leave any evidence behind. Chatham believed that if it were him, he would at most subdue the judgment knights and hand them over to the Inquisition after a severe beating. However, demon hunter knights had to be cautious. While obstructing the Inquisition's actions was acceptable, causing casualties would be too much, even if it was just a group of dogs raised by the Inquisition. Such actions would definitely lead to disciplinary action afterward, either in the form of budget cuts or a halt in promotion opportunities. That's why the demon hunter knights admired the black cat so much. Using a hand crossbow, shooting with pinpoint accuracy, and targeting from behind, this Lord Nice was truly ruthless and decisive. Truly worthy of being an extraordinary being sheltered by the church. Truly, well done. The demon hunter knights whispered in their hearts. The demon hunter bureau already detested these scoundrels who were once wanted criminals, and the reason for the black cat's actions was justifiable, undoubtedly venting their frustrations for them. After all, it wasn't their budget being cut, nor their promotions being halted. Oh, wait, Lord Nice didn't seem to have a budget or a position to begin with. So, it didn't matter to either way. Seeing the strange gazes from the demon hunter knights and the occasional, pitiful, look from Charlotte, Nice felt its throat dry up. It wanted to say, it wasn't me, but seeing Charlotte's occasional, wronged, look, it could only grit its teeth and say seriously. In urgent situations, since these judgment knights dared to attack nobles, the situation has changed. As a member of the church, I have an obligation to clean up these scum for the Inquisition. Captain Chatham, please hurry and save my servants. Charlotte looked at the captain of the demon hunter squad with a pitiful look again. Chatham's gaze fell on Mrs. Mina and the others, nodding solemnly, and said to his accompanying comrades, "For this gentleman and the lady, provide medical treatment. Additionally, quickly send this lady to the church hospital." The demon hunter knights immediately got busy. Old Frank struggled to sit up. "Master, there are others. Others are being hunted too." Sherry also tightened her grip on her long sword, staring coldly at Charlotte. Although she didn't speak, Charlotte seemed to see the same hope in her eyes as in Old Frank's. "Don't worry, with Lord Nice and the demon hunter knights here, we will definitely save everyone," Charlotte comforted. After saying that, she looked at Captain Chatham with a pitiful look. Captain Chatham. Seeing the girl's irresistibly cute look and subconsciously patting his bulging wallet at his waist, the captain of the demon hunter knights looked solemn. "Of course, accepting your employment was for this purpose. Those judgment knights who illegally attacked the Castell's vassals must be stopped." Although obstructing the actions of the Inquisition was controversial, the girl had given too much. And with her pitiful and easily evoking protective instincts gaze, it was hard for the demon hunter knights to refuse. Moreover, going against the Inquisition felt pretty good to them. "Great, Captain Chatham, you're amazing, just like Lord Nice. Just now, I persuaded Lord Nice not to act, but Lord Nice insisted and said it would let everyone act without hesitation." The girl exclaimed excitedly. Her pure azure eyes curved into crescents, her innocent and radiant smile extremely healing. Nice. For a moment, the gazes of the demon hunter knights once again gathered on the black cat. Seeing the demon hunter knight's gazes and Charlotte's smiling face, Nice felt its throat parched. It wanted to say it wasn't the one who did it, but seeing Charlotte's occasional wrong look, it could only sigh and grit its teeth, saying, "We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. Yes, those bastards dared to attack innocent citizens. We cannot tolerate it. As members under the Holy Light, we have an obligation to clean up the mess for the Inquisition." The demon hunter knight's gazes became even more admiring. "Lord Nice, you're the best." Captain Chatham gave a thumbs up. Then, he said to the other demon hunter squad leaders, "Go tell everyone, Lord Nice has given orders to quickly stop those judgment knights who continue to chase the peripheral members of Rose Society. Lord Nice said if something happens, it will take the blame. Everyone, act freely, it's all on it if it causes casualties." Nice. Charlotte almost couldn't help but laugh out loud. Clearly, this Captain Chatham was also quite cunning. He suddenly found a perfect scapegoat and immediately jumped on board. Moreover, he even took the opportunity to spread the protection to the entire peripheral members of Rose Society. "Captain Chatham, please have the knights take this." Charlotte took out a black eagle badge from her bosom. She had previously used the badge to sense Sherry, who happened to be the closest. It was just unexpected that it was Sherry's family. Captain Chatham quickly took it with both hands and handed it to the others. "Miss Charlotte, are you going to the Rose Manor next?" Seeing the girl's firm expression, Chatham's heart stirred. Yes, Rose Society has always been a peripheral force of the Castell, and it has always been a family secret with the family's restrictions. Rose Society has always acted according to principles. The bell must be unrung by the person who rang it. By stopping the true judgment knights, the Inquisition troops will naturally be ordered to stop. "Captain Chatham, this sacred judgment was originally instigated by informants behind the scenes, aimed at the Castell family. Please come with me and several other captains to be witnesses." After hearing the girl's words, the demon hunter captain hesitated a little. Beating up the Inquisition troops was acceptable. Rescuing the nobles' vassals from the Inquisition troops was a slap in the face to the Inquisition, but it wouldn't cause a complete rift. It was like walking on the dangerous edge, repeatedly jumping back and forth, which was their purpose for this trip. But if they were to fight the true judgment knights, the situation would completely change. "We don't need to engage in substantive conflicts with them. Like I said before, you just need to protect me and my vassals. And Captain Kara will also come," Charlotte added. After hearing the girl's words, Chatham felt relieved. There's someone to rely on in times of trouble, and even Captain Kara is coming. They have nothing to fear. They were also curious how the girl had the confidence to snatch people from the judgment knights. And if the girl succeeded, well, that would be interesting indeed. The Demon Hunter Bureau would definitely not miss such an opportunity to add insult to injury. "Let's go. Let's follow Miss Charlotte to the Rose Manor," Captain Chatham said to the other Demon Hunter squad leaders. After that, he glanced at Mrs. Mina again, pondering. "Take this lady with us too. Captain Kara's healing skills are a bit more advanced than the church's, and the Rose Manor is closer than the church hospital. Then, I want to go too." Old Frank struggled to stand up. Sherry also covered her preliminarily treated wound and stood limping next to her mother. "Then let's go together and witness this together," Charlotte said. Mrs. Mina was lifted onto the carriage, and old Frank and Sherry supported each other into the carriage. Under the protection of the Demon Hunter Knights, the group set off grandly towards the Rose Manor. Chapter 68, Take Them Down. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. The arrest of members of the Rose Society was a long and complicated process. Of course, long and complicated were only in terms of the swift judgment of the Holy Court. In fact, the Inquisition, which had always suppressed evil with thunderous means, had hardly ever spent more than 24 hours on a divine judgment. Especially here in Board, the power center of the church in the southwest of the Crescent Kingdom. From the moment the city gates closed, Rose Society, as an underground gang, was already like a turtle in a jar. The time had come to early morning, the thunderstorm had ended, and the wind and rain were gradually subsiding. Above the canopy, the heavy dark clouds were still churning, presenting a kind of gloomy dark gray in the night. In the Rose Manor, however, the lights were brightly lit. More and more members of the Rose Society who had been arrested here, numbering at least 500, could be seen at a glance. They were all tied up with their hands bound by sacred chains, half kneeling on the ground. Behind them, piles of oily firewood were piled up. Although the heavy rain had just stopped, under the effect of magic, these firewood piles remained dry. Several judgment knights held torches, ready to ignite the firewood. The flames of the torches were a pale gold, the judgment flames capable of burning souls. These were the flames of divine judgment for enemies, criminals, heretics, and evildoers, notorious throughout the Myria continent. Anyone existing beneath these flames would have their souls utterly destroyed. Looking at those pale gold flames, some members of Rose Society turned pale, some looked dazed, but more people glared angrily at the judgment knights. All extraordinaires knew the procedure after igniting the flames of judgment. It meant the beginning of divine judgment, and the only choices left to them were two. Either to be reduced to ashes in the flames of judgment, or to sign the most stringent contract of judgment, becoming a judgment knight, fighting for the court until the last moment of life. Even death was not the end. Their soul power would be reclaimed by the judgment spear of the Holy Court, becoming part of the foundation of the Holy Court. As for those ordinary people without extraordinary powers, their fate was only one, to be consumed in the flames of judgment. Lord Rajiv, except for those who were killed in desperate resistance and a few who escaped to the inner city or outside the city before the gates were closed, most of the remaining members of Rose Society are here. Before the second-tier judgment knight Rajiv, a probationary knight respectfully reported. Moreover, why are there so few peripheral members of Rose Society? Rajiv quickly seized the loophole in his subordinate's words. The probationary knight hesitated for a moment, then whispered in Rajiv's ear. After a moment, Rajiv's gaze sharpened, and his brows furrowed slightly. What? The demon hunters are obstructing, and they even attack the Inquisition troops? These faith-corrupted fellows, don't they know what they're doing? Is it an order from the church? No, it's not. According to the judges, they seem to have been hired. The probationary knight spoke cautiously. Hired? Rajiv was stunned, then suddenly enraged. Who dares to hire them? How dare they take on such employment? It seems to be the Castell family. Castell? Second-tier knight Rajiv was slightly surprised. He narrowed his eyes and looked at the parchment in his hand. If I'm not mistaken, it seems that quite a few peripheral members of Rose Society have close ties to the Castell family, and the president of Rose Society has some dealings with the heir of Castell. Humph, these decadent noble families, colluding with gangs, oppressing the common people. I haven't even gone to trouble them yet, and they dare to come to me. Beside him, several other second-tier judgment knights nodded in agreement. Castell, if I remember correctly, isn't that one of the families His Excellency the Grand Knight specifically instructed us to focus on? They seem to be suspected of involvement with the cult of the evil gods. His Excellency the Grand Knight has been suspicious of the blood demon case that night, and the High Priest seems to be hiding something. Humph, for the sake of his own future interests, he actually allied with such filthy families. His Excellency the High Priest has really grown old. Just hiring won't involve the demon hunters in the Holy Judgment. Since Castell is behind it, there may also be the shadow of His Excellency the High Priest. After this trial, it must be reported to His Excellency the Grand Knight. His Excellency the High Priest completely disregarded the sanctity of faith and the authority of our court. The Judgment Knights were angry. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. As supervisors of the church, it was also their duty to oversee the qualification of the clergyman. Enough, let's discuss this matter after His Excellency the Grand Knight captures Sebastian Flameheart. Let's begin the trial. Leading the way, Rajiv stopped his colleagues from continuing their discussion. With that, he looked at the gathered members of the Rose Society in the manner, his voice solemn. According to the report, Rose Society harbors wanted heretical demi-humans, smuggles hand crossbows, controlled blades, awakening seeds, and other contraband, colludes with the blood demon cult, is involved in several blood demon cases in board. The president of Rose Society, Sebastian, has connections with the Adam cult active in Korea, and has ambiguous relations with the highly wanted criminal of the Holy Court, the Pure White Witch. Evidence is conclusive. According to Chapter 66, Verse 13, Volume 4 of the Sacred Code, Rose Society is confirmed as a secret evil organization, assessed as extremely dangerous, and the level of purification is immediate execution. After saying this, he looked at the people of Rose Society. Of course, our Lord has always been merciful, and evildoers will eventually receive their due punishment, but repentant individuals can also have a chance to live. Those who have fallen into the abyss of evil, make your choice, to be purified by the Lord's fire of judgment, or to repent and spend the rest of your life atoning. Spit, dogs of the Holy Court, bastards. An angry curse came from the crowd, immediately drawing the angry gaze of the Judgment Knights. Kneel. A Judgment Knight kicked the cursing man to the ground. Rajiv followed the voice and saw that the one cursing was a male demi-human, tall and strong, with a hideous appearance, and two black wolf ears on top of his head were particularly eye-catching. He is Luff, the second in command of Rose Society, highly regarded within Rose Society, and also the chieftain of the demi-human remnant taken in by Sebastian, the president of Rose Society. One of the Judgment Knights hurriedly introduced to Rajiv. Werewolf? Huh, remnants of bloodthirsty cultists that worship the extinct bloodborne royal family as their totems. It seems that Rose Society is indeed related to the blood demon. Rajiv sneered. After saying that, he withdrew his gaze and looked at the other members of Rose Society present. The stubborn ones, stay still. Those who want to repent, step forward. Hearing the words of the Judgment Knight, the captured members of Rose Society were in turmoil. After a series of angry curses, rebukes, sighs, or tears, about half of the members stepped forward. But none of the demi-humans in the extraordinary chose to move. Rajiv was not surprised by this. In the face of life and death choices, the vast majority of people still hoped to live, even if what the Holy Court offered was only a path of slow death. This was also the reason why local Inquisition troops were able to continuously replenish their strength. In fact, as a newly formed underground gang, having half of their people choose death already surprised Rajiv quite a bit. In the years he had dealt with cults, there were not many who chose to die even in the face of such proportions. This was indeed worthy of some admiration for Rose Society, and even Sebastian, the president of Rose Society who was being pursued by the Grand Knight, had some admirable qualities. The ones who persisted in their beliefs were always worthy of admiration. Of course, admiration aside, as evildoers, they must be punished. Put the sacred chains on those who want to repent, and execute judgment on the rest of the guilty. Rajiv commanded. However, as soon as he finished speaking, a clear voice broke the silence. Hold on. The Judgment Knights turned their heads, only to see a huge procession coming from outside the manor, led by a carriage adorned with a black eagle emblem. On top of it, sat a beautiful girl in a white dress. Around her, there were hundreds of demon hunters following. Seeing that black eagle emblem, Rajiv's face instantly turned ugly. His gaze fell on those who were only first-tier demon hunters. His expression turned cold. Waving his hand, he ordered. What are you still waiting for? Take down Charlotte de Castell, the heir of the Castell family colluding with Rose Society. Take down all the demon hunters who obstruct the divine judgment. If something goes wrong, I'll take the blame. Rajiv stood tall, his powerful second-tier aura sweeping across the scene. Chapter 69. The Fist is the Ultimate Negotiation. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. In the Miria world, the nobility holds many privileges, and even the church usually cannot arrest or interrogate nobles without the Lord's consent. But there is one exception. That is when the nobles collude with the evil groups determined by the Holy Court, or when the nobles themselves are involved in demonic matters and the evidence is conclusive. There is no doubt that the Castell family, who has ambiguous relations with Rose Society and hired demon hunters to disrupt the sacred judgment conducted by the Holy Court, has crossed the bottom line of the Judgment Knights. They meet all the conditions for the church to arrest nobles. As for how to deal with the issue after the arrest, that's another matter. The church will definitely negotiate with the feudal lords. If they are not demonic themselves, nobles generally won't be in danger of losing their lives, but they will certainly have to pay a price for offending the Holy Court. At least figuratively they are forced to shed some skin. Whether it's the nobles themselves or the families they represent. As for the subsequent matters, Rajiv didn't need to worry about them. That was something for the Duke and the High Priest to worry about. As an executor of the Holy Court, he only knew that the Castell, who dared to provoke the authority of the Inquisition and the Holy Court itself, must be punished, along with those demon hunters whose minds were clouded and were misled. A total of 5 second-tier Judgment Knights simultaneously stepped forward to participate in the sacred judgment. Behind them, more than 10 first-tier Judgment Knights, more than 20 first-tier Judgment Priests, and more than 100 probationary Judgment Knights were also ready to act. They quickly surrounded Charlotte's carriage along with more than 100 demon hunter knights. This was a rather terrifying force. If placed on the battlefield, so many extraordinary trained in special combat would easily handle the armies conscripted by feudal lords. The expression of the demon hunter knights instantly became serious. They gathered around Charlotte's carriage, their eyes vigilant as they watched the approaching Judgment Knights. However, the girl on the carriage remained calm. She jumped down from the carriage and came to face Rajiv, the leading Judgment Knight, elegantly lifting the hem of her dress in a curtsy. Sir Judgment Knight, greetings. I am Charlotte de Castell, the lady of the Castell family. You must be Rajiv, the one leading the sacred judgment? For this sacred judgment, the Castell family has objections. We have reason to believe this is a conspiracy against Castell by some hidden force. Therefore, we request that you suspend the judgment. Master. Miss Charlotte. Seeing the girl getting off the carriage, there were exclamations among Rose Society members who had been captured on the estate. Charlotte glanced over and saw many familiar figures among them. There was no way, the Inquisition actions were much faster. Even with the Castell's residence badges, some newcomers and old servants of Castell had long been arrested by the Judgment Knights. At the same time, the core members of Rose Society also lifted their heads one after another, casting curious and complex gazes at the girl, including the werewolf Luff and other demi-humans. As followers of Sebastian, they naturally knew that Sebastian had pledged loyalty to the Lady of Castell. They couldn't change Sebastian's decision, and after trying to persuade him as followers, they could only obey. But that didn't mean they also pledged loyalty to Castell. But at this moment, watching the girl leading the Demon Hunter Knights hastily arrive to stop the sacred judgment on Rose Society, there was a touch of emotion in their hearts, along with great confusion. What was the relationship between their Rose Society and Castell? Why did Lord Sebastian pledge loyalty to the heir of Castell? Why was the heir of Castell willing to stand up for Rose Society under such immense pressure? That was indeed immense pressure. The Inquisition had many privileges, and no noble was willing to really deal with these fanatical lunatics. The members of Rose Society were very confused. Charlotte, on the other hand, was quite clear-headed, because she knew that saving Rose Society also meant saving herself, and she did have some cards up her sleeve. Don't worry, everyone. With me here, the injustice against Rose Society will be cleared. Charlotte addressed the people on the estate. Upon hearing the girl's words, some people showed gratitude, some looked worried, but many wore expressions of confusion. Injustice. Although we don't think we deserve the Holy Court's sacred judgment, we know what we've done. The black and white in this world is not so clear-cut. After running the underworld in the outer city for so many years, our hands are not exactly clean. They weren't confident they could escape the judgment. Many of them felt guilty and were avoiding eye contact. Charlotte de Castell, huh? Rajiv quietly evaluated the girl who had left many legends in board in recent days, murmuring to himself. Just like the rumors, she possessed a beauty as if blessed by the gods. Even he, who had already devoted his body and soul to the gods, found it hard to look away from her perfect appearance, crafted like the finest artisan work. He suddenly understood why the demon hunters might side with her. Such a beautiful lady, with considerable wealth to boot, could indeed, under the dual temptations of beauty and money, lead those bastards who were always wanted to challenge the authority of the Inquisition. What a bunch of fools. But unfortunately, the Inquisition never judged based on appearances. Looking at the beautiful girl who stepped forward, Rajiv's words remained firm. Suspend the judgment? Miss Charlotte, do you know what you're saying to the Inquisition? Do you think you have the right to say such things? Or do you think that by hiring these ignorant fools to stand behind you, you have the right to interfere with the Inquisition's judgment work? Please show some restraint. If you disband your team now, I can pretend nothing happened. Rajiv spoke solemnly. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. However, even he himself didn't realize that his demeanor had softened somewhat. Moreover, the decision to initially arrest them upon seeing them had turned into a please show some restraint. It seems, a face that's too pretty can still affect one's decisions. Even for a resolute Judgment Knight. I'm sorry, Sir Judgment Knight, but I'm here to stop this illegal sacred judgment. The girl shook her head gently. Rajiv's expression instantly turned cold. Illegal? Miss Charlotte, do you work for the Inquisition now? Do you think you have the qualification to say that? Or do you think that with this group of ragtag individuals behind you, you can stop the Inquisition's judgment? With that, he looked at the Demon Hunter Knights behind her. Indeed, to Judgment Knights who had been trained as the core strength of the church from a young age, these Demon Hunter Knights recruited from wandering knights, mercenaries, and fallen nobles by the church were indeed ragtag. Seeing his contemptuous gaze, the Demon Hunter Knights immediately glared back at him. But no one dared to make a move. Rajiv snorted coldly and looked even more contemptuous at these Demon Hunter Knights. Worthless, even if there are more of you gathered, you're still worthless. However, before he could finish his words, a cold female voice rang out. Oh, and what if I, another worthless person, join them? Would that give us the qualifications? Hearing this familiar cold voice, Rajiv's gaze hardened. He looked behind the Demon Hunter Knights and saw several figures on horseback slowly appearing in the night. The leader was none other than Kara, the chief captain of the Board Demon Hunter Squad. By her side, there were 3 other Silver Moon Knights from the Board Demon Hunter Squad, and... Huh? The Duke's son, Leno? Rajiv was stunned, his face quickly darkened. Is the Demon Hunter Squad trying to rebel, Kara? And, does the Duke's mansion also want to stand up for Castell? Rajiv's gaze fell coldly on Leno. Don't look at me, I'm not representing the Duke's mansion now, only myself. Right now, I'm just a crude mercenary, doing things for money. Leno said with a grin. After saying that, he whistled towards the girl in front of the carriage. Miss Charlotte, don't forget my commission afterward, just about the same as the Demon Hunter's pay. Charlotte. Did you call him here? She glanced at the black cat. It wasn't me, I didn't call him. The Duke's mansion is probably secretly pleased at this moment. How could they possibly come out to help? Nice gave a pitifully puzzled look. Charlotte's gaze shifted between Leno and Kara, her expression somewhat strange. This Duke's illegitimate child. Could it be that Nice called Captain Kara and got him as a bonus? However, although Leno's help was somewhat unexpected for Charlotte, having another second-tier knight join her undoubtedly boosted her confidence significantly. Especially, the Judgment Knights probably didn't know that this bootlicker's motive is simply to follow Kara here. They probably thought the Duke's mansion was backing Castell. This excessive display of support was impossible to ignore. She smiled sweetly at the Judgment Knights. Respected Sir Rajiv, Captain Kara and Lord Leno are here now. Can we have a proper discussion? Meanwhile, Rajiv's face darkened completely. He could scold the 0-tier and 1st-tier Demon Hunter Knights as worthless. But the 2nd tier couldn't be insulted. Furthermore, the chief captain of the Board Demon Hunter Squad, Kara, who had the potential to advance to the 3rd tier and had already shown signs of transformation in her source power, was powerful enough to take on several 2nd tier by herself. Fists ultimately ruled negotiations. With no stronger knights present, Rajiv and the other Judgment Knights exchanged glances and fell silent. What do you want to discuss? Looking at the beautiful and charming girl, Rajiv suppressed his anger and asked coldly. Chapter 70. The Holy Light Bear Witness. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Of course, we're discussing this sacred judgment. Lord Rajiv, as the heir of the Castell family and the true allegiance of Rose Society, I have reason to suspect that this sacred judgment against Rose Society is manipulated by someone behind the scenes. Charlotte said calmly. With these words, the expressions of Judgment Knights changed. They looked at the girl with anger and sarcasm. Rajiv squinted slightly and said lightly. Miss Charlotte, do you know what you're talking about? The Rose Society shelters wanted heretics, smuggles contraband, colludes with the Blood Demon cult, is involved in several bloodborne cases in board, and the president, Sebastian, has connections with the Adam cult. These matters have already been secretly investigated by the Inquisition, and the evidence is conclusive. With that, Rajiv's expression turned cold. Given that situation, do you still want to excuse Rose Society? Or perhaps, Castell wants to protect Rose Society? Charlotte sighed and took out a scroll from her pocket. Lord Rajiv, this is what I'm going to talk about next. In fact, it was only recently that I officially contacted Rose Society and learned that they have always been a secret line of Castell family. In recent days, in order to understand what Rose Society has been doing over the years, Castell family has also conducted some investigations. The information Castell family obtained about these matters differs slightly from what you said. Firstly, sheltering heretical heretics is slander. More accurately, Rose Society takes in heretics, and the true purpose is to help the lost heretics return to the right path. These heretics were indeed once heretics, but they have long since changed their beliefs under the glory of our Lord and become devout holy believers. Upon hearing the girl's words, Kara, whose eyes were flickering with light, paused slightly and couldn't help but glance at her. And Rajiv, whose pupils were also shimmering with silver, frowned slightly. However, they did not interrupt the girl's words, and Charlotte did not pause either. Secondly, Rose Society's involvement in bloodborne cases is not true. In fact, Rose Society's purpose is to investigate the actions of the Blood Demon cult. Furthermore, Mr. Sebastian from Rose Society does have connections with the Adam cult, but it is not collusion as the informant claimed. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Mr. Sebastian actually offended the Atom cult and forced him to flee to the Crescent Kingdom. Finally, as for smuggling contraband, this is indeed true, but which underground force does not engage in such activities? The Castell family is willing to pay fines for Rose Society's smuggling, but this is not enough to classify Rose Society as an evil organization. These matters, the Castell family also has conclusive evidence, which Lord Rajiv can review one by one. Charlotte spoke calmly and convincingly. After speaking, she handed the scroll in her hand to Nice and instructed him to hand it to the Judgment Knights. Rajiv took it and did not open it, but said indifferently, Miss Charlotte, do you know that the Inquisition possesses a solidified divine magic called the Eye of Truth, which can discern lies? This divine magic is rarely mastered by anyone, but coincidentally, I am one of them. With that, he looked coldly at the girl. Miss Charlotte, you lied. With these words, the expressions of Judgment Knights became even angrier as they looked at the girl, and the Demon Hunter Knights also looked surprised and couldn't help but glance at Kara. Kara remained silent for a moment before nodding gently. She did indeed lie. Upon hearing this, the Demon Hunter Knights were also in a commotion, feeling a bit guilty. Praise be to the Holy Light. When did they become followers of the Holy Court? The demi-humans have no goodwill towards the Holy Court, and some of the wolf-eared ones with strong limbs even changed their faces on the spot, ready to erupt. But they quickly quieted down under the signal from their leader, Luff, the werewolf. The werewolf leader frowned and looked at the girl talking to the Judgment Knights. Although he didn't know what the other party was thinking, associating it with the respect Sebastian, the Lord of Rose Society, had for the girl and her confident demeanor, he inexplicably had a strange thought. She might really have a way. This thought surprised Luff himself. As the second in command of Rose Society, this was the first time he had seen Charlotte de Castell. Before this, he even had some dissatisfaction with her. However, at this moment, looking at the girl under the night sky, he didn't know why he inexplicably felt a strange trust in her words. It was like some kind of instinct. Luff was puzzled and confused. On the other hand, the second-tier Judgment Knight Rajiv's brow furrowed more and more. This was a situation he hadn't anticipated. He thought the girl was just causing trouble, but he didn't expect her to have evidence in hand as well. However, Miss Charlotte, this is just your word against ours. While the documents in your hand are detailed, they still need to be verified for authenticity. Furthermore, delaying time to fabricate evidence is not impossible. On the contrary, the Inquisition has already investigated the charges against Rose Society. Rajiv said in a deep voice. Listening to the Judgment Knight's words, Charlotte smiled slightly. After circling around for so long, she finally circled back to this topic. In fact, first pretending and then being truthful was the rhetoric she had prepared, and her goal was to continuously shift everyone's attention, ultimately making everyone ignore the various loopholes in her rhetoric and focus on verifying the authenticity of the Inquisition's evidence. You're right. We do indeed have suspicions of delaying time to fabricate evidence. But similarly, wouldn't it possible the reported materials in your hands have been carefully planned and fabricated as well? The girl said calmly. With these words, Rajiv was stunned. His gaze swept over the Demon Hunter Knights, finally settling on the leading girl with a cold expression. Miss Charlotte, are you questioning the ability of the Inquisition? No, I'm just worried that the esteemed knights of the Inquisition may be misled. If my guess is correct, this report should be anonymous, right? There are many doubts in this divine judgment. I'm just concerned that the Great Radiance may misjudge his devout followers. The girl shook her head. Outrageous. Are you questioning the radiance of our Lord? We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. Upon hearing the girl's words, the other second-tier knights beside Rajiv became furious. Rajiv's expression became even more grim. He gestured for the other Judgment Knights to remain calm, then looked deeply at Charlotte for a moment before suddenly sneering. How about this? Since Miss Charlotte is so confident and distrustful of our Inquisition, let's leave everything to the judgment of the Holy Light. Evidence may be wrong, but the light does not lie. I have never heard of demi-humans changing their faith. Let the judgment of the Holy Light witness the truth. Upon hearing Rajiv's words, the girl raised her right hand and drew a standard cross in front of her chest, devoutly saying, Praise the Lord, this is perfect. I believe. The great Lord will witness the purity of Rose Society, and the light of justice will witness the devotion of Rose Society. Watching the girl's fanaticism, Rajiv furrowed his brow slightly, unable to understand whether she was truly naive or pretending to be so. Holy Light judgment? The Demon Hunter Knights were also startled, their gazes toward the girl becoming quite strange. Yes, the Holy Light does not lie, but at the same time, the Holy Light is also more overbearing. Especially its judgment. The Holy Light judgment is a sacred art that judges the faith of the target, first created by the Holy Court Saint, Benedict III. Under the Holy Light, the devout are unharmed, while heretics, those with wavering faith, unbelievers, and those who commit sins, all receive severe punishment. From minor mental disorders to direct death under the burning of the Holy Light. This is the Holy Court's most severe judgment method. The Inquisition may make mistakes, but the Holy Light judgment does not. Moreover, for the most severe Holy Light judgment, even stains unrelated to the current divine judgment are often greatly magnified. Hundreds of years ago, the main reason the Holy Court removed the Holy Light judgment from divine judgment was that this art was too rigid to an extreme that was bordering sinister. In order to identify the true devout, it would purify all the sinners that the Inquisition had originally intended to absorb into the judgment troops. At that moment, Rajiv even had an imagination. The Inquisition just wanted to eradicate Rose Society because they wanted to replenish the local judgment troops with fresh blood. But Charlotte de Castell wanted all members of Rose Society to die. Even the knights of the church were not so extreme, the faces of Rose Society members turned even greener. Can I refuse the Holy Light judgment and just join the judgment troops? Some people were almost in tears, some even raised their hands directly. Ignoring the turmoil of Rose Society, Rajiv said indifferently. Since Miss Charlotte wants the Holy Light to judge, then prepare for the Holy Light judgment. At this point, whether or not to accept Rose Society members into the judgment troops no longer mattered. The matter had escalated to such an extent that he had to regain his dignity. Obviously, this young heir of Castell had no idea how severe the Holy Light judgment was. Naive, simple, and even a bit foolish. As an underground gang like Rose Society, with dirty hands, how could they withstand the judgment of the Holy Light? Rajiv's expression grew colder. This time, he had to deal with Rose Society and Castell family ruthlessly, to warn the world of the authority of the Inquisition. With Rajiv's command, the Judgment Knights immediately took action. They approached the members of Rose Society, raising their silver swords high, their voices fervent and devout. Our Lord Herald, you are the creator of the new world. You are divine in the Holy Court. May your Holy Light descend to give the most severe judgment to the demons and evils. Seeing the knights approaching them, chanting spells, and releasing the Holy Light judgment, many members of Rose Society turned pale. No, please, I confess, don't use the Holy Light judgment. Some people exclaimed. However, it was already too late. The Judgment Knights were always swift in their actions. With their chanting, the brilliant Holy Light suddenly bloomed in Rose Society's manner, engulfing everyone. Some people let out cries of agony. But as they cried, their voices disappeared. Still alive. But their expressions were all filled with confusion. Looking at their hands emitting a gentle halo under the Holy Light, they all stood still. Huh? Why? Doesn't it hurt? The demi-humans were even more dumbfounded as they looked at the light of faith on their bodies. Huh? When did I truly become a Holy Court believer? On the other side, seeing the members of Rose Society, with their faith lights shining either dimly or brightly under the Holy Light, the knights of the church were also stunned. Rajiv furrowed his brow slightly. Looking around, his gaze fell on a Judgment Knight, and he casually threw the person into the Holy Light. Accompanied by a piercing scream, the member of the Judgment troops thrown into the Holy Light quickly turned into ashes. The holy light lasted for about half a minute before disappearing. Although many members of the Rose Society were mentally dazed and clearly received some punishment, they all survived. At that moment, the entire estate fell silent. Chapter 71. We offer our allegiance to you. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. The faith of Rose Society is so devout? That's the only thought in the minds of all the church knights right now. Absurd, bizarre, unbelievable, yet it's the truth. The holy light cannot lie. Even the evil ones in the judgment troops have died under the holy light's judgment. Although many members of the Rose Society have been directly purified, the vast majority have survived. This fact alone is enough to overturn everyone's understanding. How about it, Lord Rajiv? Do you still think Rose Society is an evil organization? Charlotte asked casually. Rajiv fell silent, or rather, all the judgment knights fell silent. It's not unexpected that some members of the Rose Society would be purified. After all, for a non-church organization, you can't expect everyone to be devout believers. And even for the church itself, if every person were to undergo holy light judgment from top to bottom, the judgment knights couldn't be sure how many scoundrels would be purified. No organization, no matter how tight-knit, can avoid the occurrence of corruption over time. For Rose Society to have so many people withstand the holy light's judgment has greatly shocked them. Even more shocking is that those they considered heretics, the demi-humans, each and every one of them is radiating with the light of faith. Absurd. Are these guys really demi-humans? Even the demon hunter knights were dumbfounded by the light emanating from them. Rajiv's expression grew darker. He didn't answer the girl's question but instead gave a cold snort, stepped forward, and grabbed the collar of the demi-human leader, Luff the werewolf, and coldly asked. Tell me, what is your faith? His eyes glowed, and the eye of truth instantly activated. Luff had previously cursed them as lackeys of the holy court, but now the light of faith on his body was as bright as stars. Rajiv couldn't believe there was no problem here. Seeing this second-ranked judgment knight being so cautious, Charlotte's gaze also narrowed slightly. She secretly sighed and began to prepare her next targeted rhetoric. Luff fell silent. His gaze shifted from the girl to the judgment knights for a long time before looking back at the judgment knight again, contemplating. Speak. Rajiv angrily repeated. I naturally believe in the great divine. Luff lifted his head proudly and said lightly. Silver light flashed in Rajiv's eyes, and he was slightly astonished. The other party was telling the truth. Charlotte, on the other hand, glanced at the wolfman unexpectedly. This guy is really good at skating around the edge. The great divine. Although the continent of Myria generally associates this statement with the holy court, Nice once told her that a long time ago, this phrase actually applied to all true gods. It's just that with the holy court becoming dominant, this saying gradually became monopolized by the holy court. Now, most people, especially the judgment knights, equate the great divine with the Lord Herald. In this case, is the faith of demi-humans actually related to a true god? Didn't the book say they only worship totems? Charlotte was somewhat curious. Of course, now is not the time for curiosity. Since Rajiv's questioning was cleverly resolved by the smart werewolf, there was no need for her to brew rhetoric again. It's time to strike back, and she must not let the judgment knights detect any flaws in the werewolf's words. Lord Rajiv, do you not believe in the holy light's judgment? Or, are you doubting the power of our Lord? Charlotte asked calmly. Rajiv stiffened slightly, loosening his grip on the werewolf's hand. His expression changed uncertainly, and the judgment knights exchanged glances. Yes, Lord Rajiv, don't you believe in the holy light's judgment? Actually wanting to judge devout believers, the Inquisition is really corrupt. Ha, a bunch of lunatics who do evil under the banner of faith. Seeing Rose Society gain the recognition of the holy light and the Inquisition suffering, the demon hunter knights were immediately delighted, and their confidence bolstered. They were all being sarcastic and adding fuel to the fire, afraid that the situation wouldn't become chaotic enough. Even worse, many demon hunter knights stepped forward, rubbing their hands together, eager to move, obviously ready to fight. If they were hesitant to fight before because of the great gap in strength, and they were afraid of taking responsibility, now, they had every reason to stop the Inquisition. Protecting devout believers was the duty of the demon hunters. Even the female knight, Kara, placed her hand on the hilt of her sword. Rajiv's complexion grew even uglier. He glanced at the increasingly nervous judgment knights, gritted his teeth for a moment, and finally sighed, commanding. Stop the judgment, release the people from Rose Society, let's go. After saying that, he mounted his horse, leading the judgment knights, and turned to leave. Hold on. Charlotte suddenly called out to him. Rajiv looked at the girl coldly. Miss Charlotte, we have already suspended the divine judgment. What else do you want? Rajiv asked. Charlotte glanced at the black cat, Nice, who immediately understood, stepped forward, and sneered. Hey, what do you mean? Tonight, the Inquisition has caused such great harm to Rose Society. I don't know how many devout believers have died under the sword of the Inquisition. Now that you have found out you judged wrong, do you just want to leave? Rajiv's brow furrowed even deeper. What do you mean, Lord Nice? Of course, I mean it literally, Lord Rajiv. You represent the Inquisition, don't you? The Inquisition represents the Church. A wrong judgment has harmed innocent believers. Shouldn't you explain? Shouldn't you compensate? How can the Church gain people's trust in the future? Nice said leisurely. Rajiv was furious. Are you mocking the Inquisition? However, looking at Nice's smug cat face and the gathered dangerously looking demon hunter knights, he fell silent for a moment. Finally, he sighed. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. I will report this matter to His Excellency, the Grand Knight. How to compensate Rose Society will be decided by His Excellency, the Grand Knight. With these words, Rose Society's status as an innocent organization was completely confirmed. Charlotte breathed a sigh of relief. She smiled slightly and said, I trust in the fairness of His Excellency, the Grand Knight, and I believe in the promises of all the esteemed judgment knights. She didn't continue to pressure them, lest these crazy people become even more desperate. With a serious expression, the girl continued. However, I think it is most important for the Inquisition to investigate the identity of the informer. The judgment knights are righteous and admirable. It is only because they were misled by the informer behind the scenes that they mistook Rose Society for an evil organization. This secretive informant is malicious. It may seem like they are targeting Rose Society, but in reality, they are targeting Castell and the Church. I highly suspect that this hidden force is likely related to the Blood Demon cult. So, Lord Rajiv, I believe that capturing these truly sinister instigators who sow discord is the most important thing. The Blood Demon cult? Judgment Knight Rajiv narrowed his eyes. Even the female knight, Kara, instantly became serious, her gaze fixed on the girl. Yes, a few days ago, after the Duke's banquet, I was almost assassinated again. The assailant was from the Blood Demon cult. Charlotte said. Rajiv's expression immediately became solemn. I see, he said after a moment of contemplation. Then, he nodded slightly and gestured to the other judgment knights, retreat. The judgment knights acted swiftly. After Rajiv gave the order to retreat, they quickly withdrew from the Rose estate. As they left, their faces were all unsightly, clearly holding back a lot of anger. Charlotte smirked. Presumably, the Blood Demon cult hidden in board would have a hard time for a while. Turning her gaze away from the departing judgment knights, the girl approached the members of Rose Society and said to the demon hunter knights who had followed. Esteemed knights, please release the members of Rose Society from their sacred chains. Upon hearing this, the demon hunter knights immediately took action, and the freed members of Rose Society all focused their gaze on Charlotte. There were complex emotions among them, gratitude, excitement, confusion. Master, we knew it, Castell would never abandon us. The old servants and young boys and girls who had been arrested as peripheral members were excited, kneeling on one knee. Even those elders and newcomers who had been rescued early and came with the girl also bowed respectfully. Please rise, protecting family vassals is my duty. Charlotte said, helping them up. At the same time, led by the werewolf leader, Luff, the members of Rose Society came to Charlotte. Luff's expression was complex. Under Charlotte's astonished gaze, the second in command of Rose Society suddenly knelt down and said hoarsely, "Lady Charlotte, thank you for rescuing us. Although I don't know what methods you used to save us, the Blood Wolf tribe has always repaid kindness. I have never understood why Lord Sebastian chose to follow you, why he made us pledge allegiance to you, but now, I somewhat understand. From today onwards, we will also pledge our allegiance to you, just like we do to Lord Sebastian." After speaking, Luff bowed his head and kissed the girl's toe, performing the most solemn allegiance ritual among the demi-humans. Behind him, the other demi-humans also prostrated themselves. Like a chain reaction, gradually, the members of Rose Society knelt one by one, paying their respects to the girl. Underground forces place the greatest emphasis on loyalty and righteousness. The president of Rose Society has declared his allegiance to Charlotte more than once within the organization, but the upper and lower echelons of Rose Society have always been puzzled and resistant. But this time, after being rescued, they finally accepted it. As the first rays of golden sunlight broke through the darkness, bringing light, the night had passed, the clouds had dispersed, and the sun had risen. The warm and gentle morning sun shone on the girl, adding a touch of sanctity to her already beautiful appearance, like a savior angel. Seeing her dazzling figure, the posture of the members of the Rose Society became even more respectful. At the same time, in Charlotte's perception, Her Majesty magic began the most rapid growth in history. Soon, Her Majesty magic reached the pinnacle of mastery, just one step away from true perfection. She was just one step away from advancing to the first tier starry sky. Great Lady Charlotte, did you modify the Holy Light Judgment? How did you modify the Holy Light Judgment? Nice couldn't help but ask his question. Of course, it asked through the telepathy function of the servant's final oath. Charlotte glanced at it and answered in her mind. Of course, after the judgment of the divine believers, I added, are loyal to the Rose Society, or loyal to Charlotte de Castel. Nice. To filter subordinates with the Holy Light, that's quite evil. I can only say, only you would do it. It showed an admiring expression of worship. At that moment, accompanied by the sound of hooves, a judgment knight returned. Under the wary gaze of everyone, they saw him come to Charlotte and quickly say, Lady Charlotte, Lord Rajiv asked me to tell you something. The divine judgment of Rose Society can be revoked, but the president of Rose Society, Sebastian, attacked the church's clergy a few days ago. He has been judged as a sinner and is being pursued by His Excellency, the Grand Knight. I also hope that you know who should be saved and who should not. With that, the knight mounted his horse again and quickly left. And Charlotte's brow furrowed. Chapter 72, Second Blood Summoning. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Attack on the church's clergy? Sebastian? Charlotte furrowed her brows. Impossible, absolutely impossible. Lord Charlotte, Lord Sebastian has always been cautious in his actions, and he has always instructed us not to antagonize the church and the nobility. He would definitely not attack the clergy. The werewolf Luff firmly denied, shaking his head vigorously. Charlotte pondered. Others might not be aware of what Sebastian had done, but Charlotte knew. He had gone to investigate the young nobleman Jordan, who was likely involved with the blood demon cult. Attacking the Holy Court's clergy, regardless of whether it's true or false, if Sebastian had really done such a thing, Charlotte believed there must be a reason behind it. Perhaps, Sebastian had discovered something. Fortunately, since the Judgment Knight said that the Grand Knight was chasing Sebastian, it meant that Sebastian hadn't been captured yet. That was a good thing. As long as he hadn't fallen into the hands of the Inquisition, there was still room for maneuver. Thinking this, Charlotte took a deep breath. Sebastian must be saved. He was currently the strongest force she could rely on. Even if she returned to the Castel's domain in the future, Sebastian would still be her loyal dog. No, her servant. The key was how to save him. Escaping from the pursuit of a third-tier Grand Knight meant that Sebastian's current strength, even if not at the third tier, was probably far beyond the second tier. To be honest, Charlotte couldn't intervene in a battle of this level. Moreover, Charlotte didn't even know where Sebastian was at the moment. However, she had an idea of how to contact Sebastian. As for how to rescue him from the pursuit, she had some ideas as well. I understand Sebastian's character. He's definitely not a reckless guy. There might be a misunderstanding in this matter. You all should go and heal your wounds first. The matters afterward will be handed over to Castel family. Charlotte promised to the members of Rose Society. The members of Rose Society glanced at each other. Each family knew its own affairs. They were well aware of their own capabilities. According to the dark history of Rose Society, they would certainly not escape a Holy Light Judgment. Without a doubt, the girl must have done something secretly before the Holy Light Judgment. However, they were not fools. They naturally knew what to ask and what not to ask. After the Holy Light Judgment, those who remained here were almost all loyal supporters of Sebastian or Charlotte, and they wouldn't speak nonsense. Now, with the previous rescue, they also had some awe of the girl's mystery. Although they didn't know what she intended to do to rescue their leader, in the face of Charlotte's reassuring words, they finally calmed down. The Demon Hunter Knights looked at each other, and finally, Captain Chatham spoke to the girl. Miss Charlotte, regarding matters involving the Grand Knight, we are powerless. Even Captain Kara cannot interfere. The Grand Knight is a truly powerful and supreme blazing sun knight. I think, perhaps you can go to find the High Priest. Only he can find and persuade the Grand Knight of the Inquisition. I know he refused you before, but I think it must have been for the sake of the overall situation. Now that Rose Society has been proven to be righteous and has the backing of Castel, I believe the High Priest will take action. Captain Chatham's expression was sincere. But Charlotte felt a bit helpless. Go find the High Priest again? That old hypocrite was probably a pervert. If she went to find him, she would be throwing herself into the lion's den. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. Of course, on the surface, she expressed her gratitude for the advice of the Demon Hunter Knight. After all, they had no idea what she had encountered, and she couldn't afford to offend the High Priest without evidence. Captain Chatham, thank you for your reminder, and thank you to all the knights for your help today. The girl bowed to the Demon Hunter Knights. The Demon Hunter Knights waved their hands repeatedly. They were just doing their job for money, and they were also delighted to see the Inquisition lose face today. After speaking to the Demon Hunter Knights, Charlotte looked at Kara and thought for a moment before saying, Captain Kara, regarding the Blood Demon cult. After everything has settled down, I will visit again. Kara responded calmly. After that, she turned and left. The Duke's son Leno also hesitated for a moment, smiled politely at the girl, and then quickly followed Captain Kara, running faster than the wind. Charlotte felt a little regretful but also relieved. She still didn't know Sebastian's situation, and the specific information about the Blood Demon cult was also in his hands. At present, it was not the right time to have a deep conversation with Kara. Master, I have instructed them to search for those family members and new members who have not been found. What should we do next? Kasimoto asked respectfully. Contact the hospital of the church to treat the injured, and then take our people back to Castel Manor first. Looking at the sun that was about to come out completely, Charlotte said. Returning from the outer city to Castel Manor, it was already bright outside. Once back at the manor, Charlotte instructed everyone not to disturb her and locked herself in the study alone. The second blood summoning was already fully charged, and time was running out. She planned to perform the second blood summoning. This time, her target for the summoning was not someone else but Sebastian. She wanted to communicate with him through the blood summoning, learn about his situation, and help him escape through the blood summoning. More precisely, it was to help him escape by signing a blood contract with him. Thinking of this, Charlotte immediately took action, silently chanting the blood summoning, and once again entered the Dark Knight Castle. The familiar crimson flooded everything, and the girl stood once again upon the blood throne, her petite figure changing into her adult form. Silver hair, golden red eyes, tall figure with graceful curves, and that mysterious and noble black divine dress. According to the explanation in the Gospel of Blood, this form was Charlotte's liberated state in the Dark Knight Castle. Sitting high on the throne, Charlotte gently closed her eyes. With her intention, the sea of blood descended once again, and countless crimson stars emerged, floating around her. Among all the crimson stars, there was one that gave her a strong sense of familiarity, and Charlotte could even smell Sebastian's breath faintly. However, at this moment, the light of that star was extremely dim and weak, giving a feeling of instability, as if it could extinguish at any moment. Charlotte didn't hesitate. She reached out and touched the star belonging to Sebastian. At the next moment, the crimson light burst forth. Chapter 73, Sebastian's Allegiance. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. This is a sparse forest. Within the forest, a dilapidated wooden house looms faintly among the bushes. Inside the wooden house, Sebastian is half lying amid the weeds, his face pale. He is covered in blood, his elegant tailcoat already tattered. The left half of his sleeve is even more empty, as his entire left arm has been cut off from his shoulder by a sharp weapon. The trickling blood flows down his wounds, gathering beneath him into a small stream. As an ancient flame elf, he keenly feels his life force rapidly draining away. Struggling to lift his head, Sebastian looks towards the window. A golden energy shield has already enveloped the wooden house. He recognizes it as one of the signature divine magic of the Holy Court, a sealing spell used to imprison divine beings. This complex and intricate divine magic is usually only used when sealing off large forces. But now, it's being used on him alone. Hey, they're using the judgment prison directly. The Grand Knight really thinks highly of me. With a smirk, Sebastian laboriously raises his right hand, skillfully retrieving a goblet from his storage space and pouring the last drop of red wine from the bottle into it. Elegantly lifting the goblet, he takes a gentle sip. Sebastian, you're surrounded. The Grand Knight said, if you voluntarily surrender and seal your own power, the Inquisition can spare your life and give you a chance to reform. Are you still waiting for someone to come and save you? The Inquisition has already initiated the sacred judgment against Rose Society. I'm sure Rose Society is now completely finished. The shouts of the Judgment Knights come from outside the wooden house, urging Sebastian to surrender. Sebastian scoffs. Surrender? Join the ranks of the Judgment troops as cannon fodder? I've even betrayed Lune Island. No one can force me to do something I don't want to do. If you're capable, come in yourselves. Surrender? He is a proud flame elf. In his dictionary, the word surrender has never been written. Sebastian's proud and disdainful words resonate from the wooden house. Around the wooden house, the Judgment Knights look at each other. Grand Knight, he refuses to surrender. Should we launch a strong attack? He's already heavily injured. Even if you don't intervene, he won't be our match. The Judgment Knight who shouted respectfully asks the Grand Knight behind him. The Grand Knight is a middle-aged man who looks to be in his 40s or 50s, with a standard square face, stubble, sharp features, and a stern expression. However, unlike his rugged appearance, his eyes have a different calmness. Looking at the wooden house in the Judgment Prison, he shakes his head gently. No need. Sebastian Flameheart was once a high elf just one step away from being a legendary. Every elf is a natural magical creature, able to resonate with elements at the cost of their own soul. Someone like him, even if heavily injured, can still take a few with him before he dies. Since he refuses to surrender, then let's set it on fire. I want to see if this so-called flame elf is afraid of flame. The Grand Knight says lightly. He doesn't hide his voice. His calm words enter the wooden house, causing Sebastian, who is sipping wine lightly, to sigh inwardly. The Judgment Knights are always fighting against the enemies of the Holy Court, surrounded by danger at every turn throughout their lives. To rise from the smallest trainee Judgment Knight to become a Grand Knight suppressing one side, besides powerful strength, calmness and caution are necessary. Sebastian knows that his idea of taking a few Judgment Knights down with him has failed. The Judgment Knights quickly take action. They take out buckets of grease and bundles of dry firewood, pouring them towards the wooden house and stacking them up. Watching the actions of the Judgment Knights through the window, Sebastian can only sigh lightly. He is too heavily injured, really too heavily injured. The magic power in his body has long been completely exhausted, his entire left arm has been severed by a sword, and even the pair of legs under him has been rendered useless under the Grand Knight's sacred fury. He can no longer use any magic. All he can do is wait for the Judgment Knights to approach, burn his soul, trigger an elemental storm, and perish together. However, even this is no longer possible now. Lord Sebastian, wake up. The blood demon cult behind you has already abandoned you. They won't come to your aid. Now surrender, while you still can. After stacking the firewood and pouring the oil, the Judgment Knights shouted again. I have no interest in living a life of compromise. Furthermore, don't insult me by mentioning the blood demon cult. That bunch of trash, I don't even care about them. Sebastian mocked. Upon hearing this, the Grand Knight frowned slightly, then ordered. Ignite it. With his command, the Judgment Knights raised torches burning with the flames of judgment and set the pile of firewood ablaze. The fire quickly spread, engulfing the entire wooden house. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. Is it over? Watching the thick smoke spreading around him, Sebastian muttered to himself. There's some reluctance in his heart. He never expected his life to end here. However, it was his choice, and he must bear the consequences of his choice. I wonder, what is the Lady of the Night doing now? I haven't returned for so many days. Is she worried about me? Upon hearing the news of Rose Society being judged by the Holy Court, will she stand up for Rose Society? At this moment, Sebastian's thoughts slowed down infinitely, thinking about many things. But soon, he felt that thinking like this was childish and ridiculous. What are you thinking? She's the Lady of the Night. She's a true god. Although she has not regained her power now, although she looks like a mortal now, but how could she really be immortal? Gods won't mistreat their followers, but gods also have their own indifference and calmness. Now, what qualifications do I have for her help and rescue? Perhaps in the Lady of the Night's eyes, I am just a waste. Sebastian sighed lightly. He knew he had never truly gained the Lady of the Night's complete trust. Because he had never truly devoted his loyalty to the Lady of the Night. As an elf with a long lifespan, he had seen too many stories about gods and their followers. And in every story, when a god chooses their followers, the first question they ask is, what do you want? But the Lady of the Night never asked. He didn't believe that the Lady of the Night, such an ancient god, didn't know this in spoken rule. He believed even more that the other party had already seen through his thoughts and was waiting for him to speak first. But he didn't dare to speak. To follow a god in order to become a god? Such a selfish and disrespectful purpose. I'm afraid no god would approve of it, right? In history, the followers of those gods were all fervent believers. Becoming a god was a gift they received from the god they follow, rather than the direction they strive for. Sebastian knew that he couldn't gain the Lady of the Night's approval for this reason. So, he had never dared to tell the Lady of the Night proactively why he pledged allegiance to her. But he knew that the Lady of the Night must have already understood. However, knowing and not saying it was two different concepts for gods. He was afraid, he was uneasy, he was worried. So, he repeatedly performed in front of the Lady of the Night. He wanted to prove himself, prove his strength, prove that even if he didn't reveal his heart, he still had value to the Lady of the Night. Prove that he had the ability to become a god's follower. He believed that this was a tacit transaction between himself and the god. Perhaps, deep down, I am still very proud. No, this is not pride, but arrogance. Even though I decided to follow God, I have always had the mentality that I can eventually follow the god and become a god myself, and I have never genuinely felt awe for the gods. Such a person like me, I'm afraid I have never truly entered the Lady of the Night's view. Haha, looking at it this way, I am indeed a foolish person, proud yet humble, arrogant yet self-deprecating. Sebastian self-mockingly said. There are still many things he can't let go of. Lune Island, Rose Society, his lost homeland. He also really wants to go and see the scenery from a higher place. However, he can't go that far anymore. He didn't give his sincere heart. And when the crisis came, he would inevitably be abandoned. The temperature in the wooden house began to rise, and the smoke became thicker. Under severe injuries, Sebastian's consciousness became increasingly blurred. In the haze, his vision seemed to be filled with crimson flames. A familiar voice sounded in his ears. Sebastian, you look quite miserable today. Chapter 74, Bloodkin. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. The Lady of the Night? It seems that it's time for my death, and I'm starting to have hallucinations. It's as if I can hear the voice of the Lady of the Night. Sebastian mocked himself inwardly. With a light sigh, he closed his eyes, waiting for death to come. However, he quickly realized that something was amiss. At some point, the world around him seemed to suddenly fall silent. The stinging smell of burning oil and dry firewood disappeared. The gradually increasing temperature of the blazing wooden house seemed to vanish. Even the crackling of flames, and the conversations of the Judgment Knights, all disappeared. Almost instinctively, Sebastian opened his eyes again, and soon he was slightly surprised. What greeted his eyes was not the grayish-white smoke and the dilapidated wooden house accompanying the firelight, but the familiar crimson mist and the still majestic ancient castle. Upon layers of ancient steps, the majestic blood throne resided in the center, with a tall figure concealed within the crimson mist seated upon it. The Lady of the Night. It's the Lady of the Night. The Lady of the Night has summoned him back to this strange spiritual world again. Sebastian's spirits lifted. Instinctively, he wanted to rise and bow, and then, he actually succeeded in standing up. This was the spiritual world. Here, his hands and feet were intact, and even his black tailcoat remained elegant and refined. Lady of the Night. Seeing the familiar figure on the throne, Sebastian's voice was filled with excitement. But soon, he became anxious again, ashamedly lowering his head. Forgive me, lady, Sebastian is incompetent for getting caught by the Inquisition. Sebastian's voice grew smaller, various regretful thoughts turning in his mind. At the same time, sitting high on the throne, Charlotte was also startled. She heard Sebastian's true inner voice. She also understood Sebastian's true intentions in wanting to follow her. Wow, so he regarded me, who possesses the gospel blood, as the resurrected true ancestor of the Bloodborn, and wanted to hitch a ride to godhood. He really thinks wildly. I'm not even a starry sky yet. He's already thinking about how to become a god. Wait a minute, slow down. Does he think I know all this? Does he think he's doing some kind of unspoken deal with me? So he's bootlicking because of this? What the hell? Listening to Sebastian's chaotic inner thoughts, Charlotte was at a loss. However, after the confusion, she quickly figured out many things. Strong individuals have their own pride. Like Sebastian, turning into a lapdog so soon after meeting someone is indeed abnormal. Now that she knows the other's inner thoughts, she understands everything. He's not seriously bootlicking. Bootlicking is just his way of alleviating his inner unease and tension. He's bootlicking because he's feeling guilty. He thinks his reasons for following this evil god won't be accepted. He has ambitions and pride. He thinks he can't possibly pledge allegiance to a god as a pure believer. But he also admires the power of the gods immensely. He wants to follow God, but he's afraid his true thoughts will provoke God's wrath. Charlotte didn't know what the gods of Myria thought of Sebastian's mindset. Perhaps, just like Sebastian thought, they really would be angry at the existence of someone who followed them with the purpose of becoming a god, considering such arrogant thoughts as trampling on the dignity of the gods. Perhaps, in their eyes, humble mortals simply have no right to negotiate with the gods. What the gods give is a blessing, and what mortals offer is a duty. Regardless of what the true gods think, Charlotte doesn't have such thoughts at all. Perhaps it was her identity as a transmigrator that made her lack sufficient awe for Myria's gods. Perhaps it was her education in her past life that formed a moral value of nobles, kings, and generals should have their own dignity. Perhaps it was the existence of the gospel of blood that gave her a lot of unfounded confidence. Anyway, she didn't think Sebastian's thoughts were unacceptable, nor did she think they were blasphemous. He just wants to become a god, right? When one person achieves greatness, even their pets ascend to heaven. If one day she could also occupy a divine seat, as long as her followers are loyal enough, what does it matter if she shares some positions? At the same time, a strange thought began to spread in Charlotte's mind. It seems, even mortals in this world can become gods. Even Sebastian has thoughts of becoming a god, why can't she give it a try? What's the point of disguising herself as an evil god with artifacts? Becoming a true god would justify her transmigration to this world. Of course, the road has to be taken step by step, and the meal has to be eaten bite by bite. She wasn't even first here now, nor had she inherited any territory. Thinking about becoming a god now is like an elementary school student worrying about whether to go to Tsinghua University or Peking University in the future. Knowing Sebastian's true intentions makes it easier. Her second blood summoning was to save the other party and completely subdue him. And now, it's time to be open and honest. With this in mind, Charlotte lightly tapped the armrest, and her clear and dignified voice echoed from the blood throne, tinged with a hint of disappointment. You are indeed incompetent, not only incompetent but also foolish. Your arrogance wants the whole world to know about your relationship with Castell, hitching yourself to Castell's bandwagon. Your arrogance has never allowed you to truly appreciate loyalty, willingly imprisoning yourself in shackles. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. And your foolishness has put both you and Rose Society in unprecedented danger. Listening to Charlotte's words, Sebastian's face grew even paler. He felt as though every word of the Lady of the Night was striking his soul, exposing all his inner thoughts and anxieties. She knows. She really knows everything. She has been waiting for me to confess my desires voluntarily. This isn't some unspoken deal. It's my own unilateral arrogance. Upon hearing the implied meaning in the Lady of the Night's words, Sebastian's face fell. He knew he had disappointed her. However, just as Sebastian was sinking into despair, the divine figure sitting high on the throne changed the tone. But, as a probationary steward, your ability is indeed commendable. Even when pursued by the Inquisition, you did not expose your master's secret. Sebastian, not as a follower of a god, but as the Count of Castell, Charlotte de Castell's follower. Are you willing to pledge me your allegiance? Sebastian was momentarily stunned, raising his head with a puzzled expression. In the mist, he still couldn't see the Lady of the Night clearly, but he seemed to sense a faint smile in her words. As if realizing something, Sebastian suddenly became excited. You mean? The figure on the throne continued. Everyone has their own goals, and I have never cared about your so-called blasphemous thoughts. I only care whether you are truly loyal. I cannot promise you anything, after all. I am still just a weak little girl. But, as the heir of Castell, I will naturally not mistreat those who are loyal to me. As long as your achievements match your merits, even if it's the stars in the sky, they will be yours in the future. Sebastian understood. He was almost instantly exhilarated, cheering in his heart. She hasn't given up on me. The Lady of the Night hasn't given up on me. She doesn't care about my ambitions at all. She's willing to give me a chance. God, this is what a true god is like. A true god represents absolute confidence and greatness, absolute power and majesty. A true god doesn't care about mortal ambitions at all. I'm willing to truly submit to you, to be the sword and shield in your hands. I'm willing to witness your return to greatness, witness your ascension to the divine throne. I, with my true name, Sebastian Flameheart, swear on it. Sebastian exclaimed excitedly. He respectfully knelt on the ground, performing the most ancient allegiance ceremony of the elven race. And when he raised his head again, he was momentarily stunned. At some point, the crimson mist above the throne had dissipated, and he saw the Lady of the Night's appearance clearly for the first time. He didn't know what language to use to describe the majesty and beauty of the Lady of the Night. It was just that her magnificent silver hair, deep and mysterious golden eyes, elegant posture, and splendid yet solemn black divine gown made it difficult for him to find suitable words to praise her otherworldly mystery and perfection. He was almost dazed with just one glance, and then quickly bowed his head respectfully, not daring to look again. Raise your head. The majestic and melodious voice came from the throne. Almost instinctively, Sebastian raised his head, seeing that the Lady of the Night now held a crystal goblet in her hand. The goblet contained a flowing crimson liquid, shimmering with radiance. With a gentle wave of her hand, the crystal goblet floated in front of Sebastian. In that case, drink this cup of blood contract. I don't want to see my followers perish just after they've been chosen. Think it over carefully. Once you drink it, you will become my bloodkin, never to betray, completely marked with my seal. Of course, you will also gain some extraordinary powers. The Lady of the Night smiled. Sebastian didn't hesitate. He decisively picked up the crystal goblet and drank the crimson liquid in one gulp. In the next moment, dazzling crimson radiance bloomed on his body. Sebastian felt a strange power entering his consciousness, difficult to describe in words. He faintly sensed that he had established a mysterious connection with the figure on the throne, the Lady of the Night. That strange power quickly crossed the boundaries between dreams and reality, flowing through Sebastian's physical body in reality. Sebastian was astonished to find that, at this moment, he could feel his physical body in reality, and that his broken body was beginning to heal rapidly. However, Sebastian's focus quickly shifted away from his own body. He couldn't help but look again at the Lady of the Night sitting on the throne. After drinking the blood covenant and formally pledging allegiance to the Lady of the Night, he felt that her temperament had suddenly changed. The ancient dark castle suddenly began to tremble, and the crimson mist began to boil. In Sebastian's awe-filled gaze, an ancient and vast aura began to rise from Charlotte. Sitting high on the throne, Charlotte was also stunned. Her Majesty magic had just reached perfection. The brilliance of the spirit path spread like flames, illuminating the first step of her ascension. She was about to advance. And, it seems it won't be ordinary advancement. Chapter 75, Advancement. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Charlotte only felt the Gospel of Blood in her consciousness suddenly burst into crimson radiance, with golden inscriptions on it lighting up one by one, as if coming alive. She felt she could hardly suppress a force rapidly rising from the depths of her spiritual world. With the ascension tree in her consciousness as the starting point and the artifact, Gospel of Blood, as the medium, a vast and majestic force surged, and swiftly began to reshape Charlotte's spiritual world. In Sebastian's astonished gaze, the crimson mist boiled incessantly, the ancient Dark Knight castle collapsed suddenly, then swiftly reformed, only to collapse and reform again. Only the Dark Knight lady sitting high on the blood throne remained unchanged throughout eternity. In Sebastian's sight, her expression was incredibly calm, as if she had everything around her under control. Seeing her like this, Sebastian gradually felt reassured, as if he had found his idol. At the same time, sensing her increasingly terrifying aura, a joyous thought arose in Sebastian's mind. Could it be, the Lady of the Night has regained some power? Charlotte didn't know if advancing in ranks counted as regaining power. She only knew that the changes in her spiritual world had slipped from her control. She wasn't calm. Rather, under that mysterious power, she had lost some control over her facial expressions. Fortunately, the force ravaging the castle world subsided after about a minute. But that vast force did not disappear. Instead, it followed the connection between Charlotte and reality, surging into her physical body. Charlotte could clearly feel her physical body in reality starting to undergo a transformation. In her perception, she could distinctly feel her power skyrocketing. In the depths of her mind, she felt as if she had broken through an invisible barrier, and her entire life seemed to have undergone sublimation in an instant. At the same time, Charlotte's consciousness suddenly began to rapidly expand. She still sat high on the blood throne, yet saw the real world, saw beyond the study, saw the bustling activity in the Castell Manor, saw the streets outside. Her consciousness quickly ascended, seeing the entire board city, seeing it gradually shrink, seeing the plains, mountains, rivers. She saw the stars. No, they weren't ordinary stars. They were planets, enveloped in radiance, emitting dazzling light, yet they were not stars. Charlotte's gaze quickly fell on the nearest star. The radiance of the star seemed to emanate from the great power shrouding it. Through the radiance, Charlotte could see countless beings seemingly living on it, their expressions devout, bowing towards one grand temple after another in worship. In the center, surrounded by numerous temples on the star, a towering colossal temple stood. Through that towering temple, Charlotte seemed to see a giant of light seated on a throne. The light giant was so immense that Charlotte could sense its incomparable power and its terrifying and vast aura with just one glance. At the moment she cast her gaze, the figure also cast its gaze towards her. Charlotte couldn't see the figure clearly, everything about it was hidden in the radiance. But a voice, old and gentle, came through. My dear child, peering into the kingdom of the gods is not a good habit. The voice was calm. Charlotte even detected a polite tone within it. Damn. This is a god. Charlotte was startled. She couldn't maintain this strange state in an instant, and her consciousness fell rapidly. In a daze, her consciousness returned to the dream world once again. The castle was still the same castle, everything seemed unchanged, but Charlotte soon noticed the difference. Looking at the castle walls, her gaze slightly condensed. She saw vivid paintings appearing on the walls. In the painting, a mysterious woman wearing a divine robe sat high on the throne, accepting the bow of an elf wearing a tailcoat. It depicted the scene where Sebastian had just